Chapter 161. How is it now? Ye Tian asked. Yuling's face tightened. Not good. The sea beasts keep pressing in. They harass the rift from time to time. So far, it's only king-class beasts, but if something stronger shows up... She let the rest hang in the air. The implication was clear. Ye Tian probed. Were you able to find out why they're attacking? He couldn't make sense of the sudden rush of sea beasts to the shore. If land and sea creatures were acting in concert, that would be strange. These were different species with no natural alliance, unless they belonged to the same bloodline. The fact that sea beasts were targeting the spatial fissure suggested something unusual had drawn them there. I don't know, Yuling said. She shook her head. As a grandmaster, her knowledge only reached so far. The deeper secrets were tightly guarded by the major families and beyond her authority to uncover. Ye Tian did not linger at the Yue family. He took his leave at once. He still had to keep an eye on the sea beasts attacking the rift in space. If something went wrong on the far side of that tier, the Demon Sea Grand Base would be in danger. Even though he'd officially joined the Zhonghai, China Sea, Super Base, he couldn't simply ignore what might happen at the Demon Sea Grand Base. I'll send my sister to the Zhonghai Super Base first, then go check it out myself, Ye Tian decided. With that settled, Ye Tian set off for the Zhonghai Super Base, escorting Ye Yu and the two beasts, Xiao Jin and Xiao Zi. Because he was responsible for one person and two animals, and Xiao Jin was especially large, he had to slow his pace to take care of them. The journey took most of the day. Ye Tian, being holy level, registered quickly at the tower gate. The duty officer took Ye Yu's information and processed her application on the spot. Before long, Ye Yu was officially a member of the Zhonghai, China Sea, Super Base. Over the next few days, Ye Tian kept moving between the scattered Cultivation Alliance's headquarters and its various branches. He spent a small fortune and nearly sold off half the valuables he carried to assemble the set of rare ingredients needed to help Ye Yu refine a flawless foundation. What he obtained were 5 almost mythical treasures: the Black Jade Blood Elixir for shattering the limit of skin refinement, the 10,000-year Lingxi meat for breaking the limit of flesh, the I Ching Medullary Washing Pill to overcome the limit of bone refinement, the blood of an Emperor-grade blood hoof beast to break the limit of blood, and the colorful Viscera Pill to transcend the limits of the 5 internal organs. Each item on its own was exceedingly rare. If not for Ye Tian's extraordinary luck, and for his willingness to post high-priced trade notices across the alliance to draw sellers out, he would never have been able to gather all 5 in such a short time. Without those measures, these treasures would have remained out of reach. Ye Tian had paid a heavy premium for the 5 treasures, probably more than 25% above their normal price, but he didn't care. If paying extra meant he could forge a flawless foundation for his sister as quickly as possible, the cost was worthwhile. That morning in the high-level cultivation chamber, Ye Tian instructed Ye Yu to begin. She was to drink the Black Jade blood juice and, with the aid of the 5 treasures, break through the 5 major bodily restraints, forge a perfect foundational core, and shatter the shackles imposed by the laws of the underworld. The vial in front of her held a liquid as black as ink. Ye Yu stared at it for a moment, gritted her teeth, and swallowed. The so-called Black Jade blood was not actual blood, but the sap of a rare plant. Its rarity and its ability to pierce the skin refinement barriers made it incredibly expensive. No sooner had the liquid slid down her throat than a thunderous, crawling itch spread across Ye Yu's skin, as if 1,000 insects were gnawing at her. She forced herself to endure. Compared with everything her bro there had done to get her here, this agony was nothing. She would not squander his kindness. Ye Tian watched his sister's agonized expression and felt a stab of helplessness. Still, breaking the physical limit was an act of defying the heavens. The pain simply had to be endured. Ye Yu tore through barrier after barrier. On the first day she refined her skin, the second day her flesh, the third day her bones, the fourth day her blood, and on the 5th she refined her internal organs, completing a flawless foundation. By comparison, Ye Tian's own breakthrough took many months and progressed much more slowly. But it was far more complete, a perfection in overcoming the physical limit that was nearly impossible to replicate. Ye Tian found the Upanishads easy to comprehend. A perfect foundation forged with a treasure could also be used to study them, but that route was far more grueling. Every time you broke through to a new enlightenment, it would drain even a genius's reserves. Ye Tian himself could grasp several Upanishads without relying on the replicating talent, and with the aid of the God of War tablet, he could elevate a single Upanishad to mastery in a few months. That was the real difference between the two ways of creating a perfect foundation. Ye Yu, however, did not possess the replicating talent. It would be nearly impossible for him to gather top-tier strength, defense, bone, and bloodline talents all at once. No major power in the Zhonghai superbase could produce a genius with so many peak talents simultaneously. Ye Tian never expected Ye Yu to become that kind of ultimate prodigy. He only wanted him to be strong enough to protect himself. Over the next few days, Ye Tian managed to trade for a relic that raised Ye Yu's speed and defense to the medium tier, the best he could obtain through trading. After Ye Tian's efforts, Ye Yu's talents read like this: Human, Leaf Rain; Cultivation, Morning Star; Ice, Top; Speed, Medium; Defense, Medium. With that combination, Ye Yu could truly be called a prodigy. Xiao Yu, Ye Tian said, using his familiar name for Ye Yu, you're here in retreat to work on the Golden Body Yuanli secret technique. With your innate gifts, it'll be easy for you to challenge the sect master. I'll be going out for a while. Xiao Yu nodded. He and Xiao Blood then took up cultivation in the advanced chamber. As for a top-tier cultivation room, Ye Tian hadn't built one yet. His formation mage rank was still at the advanced level, not top. It wasn't that he lacked the talent to handle higher formations. He simply spent most of his time on other matters and rarely worked directly with formation diagrams, so constructing the highest chamber had to wait. When he had the time, Ye Tian planned to spend a few days in the God of War Monument realm to take part in the formation trials and push his array mage rank to the peak level. Then he could construct a top-grade cultivation chamber. For the moment, however, he needed to go to the Demon Sea Grand Base first to deal with the rampaging sea beasts and the space rift. In the darkness, he had the uneasy feeling that this situation was not simple. As a precaution, he brought along a death substitute, a backup body he could use in case of disaster. This one was new, fashioned from the remains of a saint-level fierce beast he had hunted. A substitute had to match the host's cultivation level to function properly. Ye Tian arrived at the Demon Sea Grand Base quickly, but he did not enter the main complex. Instead, he flew straight to the spot where the spatial crack had opened. Here it is, he murmured, staring at the immense formation hovering above the breach. Chapter 162. Ye Tian's arrival immediately drew the attention of Yun Mengli, who had been standing guard over the tier in space. With a whoosh, Yun Mengli shot out and fixed his gaze on Ye Tian. He recognized him at once, but when he detected the faint saint-grade aura shimmering around Ye Tian, realization hit him like a punch. Ye Tian has become a saint? Yun Mengli whispered in disbelief. How could this be? Saint level. That was the realm countless king-level cultivators dreamed of. Grandmasters could live for 200 years, king-level experts for 500, and saint-level cultivators for 1,000. Saints who had forged a perfect foundation could even reach 1,500 years. Beyond their longevity, saints were vastly more powerful than foundation-stage practitioners. A saint's divine consciousness could span thousands of miles, scrutinizing every movement so closely that even an ant's stirrings could hardly escape notice. Yun Mengli felt his heart sink. He was only an extraordinary level talent. Without a treasure to refine his spiritual power, ascending to the saint level would be all but impossible. For years, he had drifted through the Zhonghai superbase, taking every chance that came his way. Opportunities had appeared now and then, but the spirit refinement treasure he craved never seemed within reach. Watching those above the holy level grow stronger with such things filled him with a quiet envy. I greet Lord Ye Tian, Yun Meng said, bowing low. There's no need to be so formal, Ye Tian replied lightly, waving the gesture away. The ground trembled as heavy footsteps approached. One by one, other king-level elites converged on the spot. When they saw the invincible king, the famed king of dreams, treat Ye Tian with such obvious humility, their expressions turned to disbelief. Whispered murmurs spread through them. Ye Tian, why is the King of Dreams acting so deferential? What's going on? Whispers rippled through the crowd. Can you feel Ye Tian's aura? It's beyond king level. Beyond king level. He broke through that fast? How did he do it, opening all 365 acupoints in such a short time, shattering the realm's restraints and rising to king level? His talent must be unreal. He should be called Lord Ye Tian now. Who could dare provoke someone above the king realm? At that moment, a renowned king-level expert and a famed mage stepped forward and bowed. Welcome, Lord Ye Tian, they said. Ye Tian inclined his head slightly and answered, I heard there was an incident in the space crack. Let me see for myself. I was once part of the Demon Sea Grand Base. Lord Ye Tian, please come in, Yun Mengli said, gesturing politely toward the central formation. Ye Tian followed her into the main array. They entered a fortified pavilion Yun Mengli had erected, where a number of king-level cultivators were already seated. Dream King, what happened exactly? How could a sea monster come all the way here to attack? Ye Tian asked, puzzled. From what I know, the sea isn't that far, but sea beasts don't like dry land. They usually won't attack warriors unless they're in the water. Yun Mengyuan frowned. Lord Ye Tian, I was baffled too. At first there was nothing, and then suddenly one day a sea beast attacked. It almost tore through the upper defensive array. Fortunately, other kings arrived one after another, but I had no choice. I had to return from the Zhonghai superbase. From what I can tell, something attracted the sea beasts. I suspect the rift beast from the space rift brought something, a treasure perhaps, that drew them here. We searched for that treasure for a long time, but it wasn't where it should have been. Treasure? Ye Tian repeated, thoughtful. The idea suddenly seemed very plausible. The ferocious beasts from the beast world were not about to give up their conquest of a new realm. Even after their last defeat, they kept probing the barrier, the spatial rift, looking for any way through. Rumors said they'd taken desperate measures. They'd used a treasure to lure the sea, beasts that lived on the surface, to attack the rift's guardian kings. If true, that assault might have shattered the Great Formation and upgraded the rift to a 3-star level. If the rift had indeed been reinforced to 3-star status, the beast army would return stronger and better prepared. They would no longer be the easy target they'd been before. With the combined strength of the 3 major bases aligned behind them, the beasts could very well push their invasion all the way through. Lord Ye Tian, why don't you try to locate that treasure? Someone suggested. Cloud Dream considered the idea, then nodded. All right, I'll try. Ye Tian closed his eyes and let his divine consciousness spread out. It fanned across thousands of miles, probing every nook and cranny, a sweep so fine it could sense an ant's heartbeat. He focused his awareness on the suspected location of the treasure, feeling for any trace of its presence. Nothing. No sign, no energy signature, no hidden artifact. The treasure simply wasn't there, or it was concealed by something that even his divine perception couldn't penetrate. Treasure hunting talent, Ye Tian muttered as he activated the long unused ability. If there really were a hidden item, the advanced treasure hunting sense should have detected it, but nothing showed up. He frowned. There were only 2 possibilities. There was no treasure at all, or the item had been placed inside a storage bag. Anything stored inside a bag couldn't be read by treasure senses or divine consciousness. Can the dream pull the kings out and gather everyone together? Ye Tian asked. Yes. Yun Mengyuan nodded and looked at Ye Tian with a long, assessing stare, as if he'd already guessed his plan. Do you think anyone would object? Yun Mengli had been thinking the same thing. After checking carefully, he concluded it was unlikely anyone had cause to interfere. Would humans really side with the beasts, and what would they stand to gain? Still, he didn't leave anything to chance. He summoned a number of kings and mages, and one by one brought them back to his castle. Ye Tian gave a quick look and asked, Are these the ones? There's also a mid-level formation mage in that retreat, Yun Meng said dismissively. He's been in seclusion for years, just an old great warrior type. Losing one won't make a difference. In Yun Meng's view, a secluded veteran couldn't have engineered this attack and had nothing to do with the matter at hand. Found him. He's the great warrior. I'll check him out. Ye Tian moved at once. The other king-level cultivators exchanged glances and followed. The formation guarding the place wasn't large, and at their rank they closed the distance in no time, arriving at the mid-level formation mage's dwelling. Ye Tian's palm struck the house, and it collapsed, revealing a middle-aged man inside. The man trembled and blurted, "My lord, why are you attacking my residence?" Ye Tian fixed him with a cold stare. "You brought the sea beast here, didn't you?" The man shook his head frantically, fear written across his face. "That's impossible, my lord. How could I have lured a sea beast here?" "Lord Ye Tian, this man is a mid-level formation mage from our base, and he's backed by a powerful family. How could he possibly be a ferocious beast?" A lord stepped forward and objected. "What if he isn't a mid-level mage from your base at all, but a ferocious beast?" Ye Tian sneered. The mid-level formation mage trembled, but forced himself to remain silent. "A ferocious beast?" Yun Mengyuan frowned. "Lord Ye Tian, we aren't idiots. How could he be a beast?" Yun Mengyuan felt Ye Tian had gone too far. Openly calling a mid-level formation mage a monster was a blatant insult. "You don't believe me?" Ye Tian shook his head slowly. "Since the recent incident, he's stayed in the rear and hasn't come out to maintain the formations." "So what?" the lord demanded. "Then let him set up a simple primary formation right now," Ye Tian said coldly. "If he can arrange it, I'll admit he isn't a ferocious beast." At Ye Tian's words, the mid-level formation mage's face drained of color. His expression changed sharply. Chapter 163. Chen Fei, set up a primary array. It's simple for you, and it will put Lord Ye Tian's mind at ease. A king-rank cultivator spoke up. Chen Fei looked flustered. "My lord, I was hurt during the retreat. My soul was damaged. I'm afraid I can't lay the array." The moment those words left his mouth, the gathered king-rank experts all went tense. Faces shifted. Without another word, they closed in and formed a ring around Chen Fei. Soul damaged? That made no sense. A mere martial cultivator on retreat shouldn't even have been developing spiritual power. How could his soul be injured? The implication was unsettling. Either Chen Fei had been through some extraordinary spiritual tampering, or he wasn't what he appeared to be. "Lord Ye Tian, is this man really a beast?" someone asked uncertainly. Yun Meng narrowed his eyes and swept his spirit sense over Chen Fei, probing even flesh and blood. He detected no trace of beastly qi or ferocious aura. Chen Fei was completely human as far as his scans could tell. Yet Chen Fei's refusal and the others' alarm made Ye Tian uneasy. "Have you ever heard of camouflage talent?" Ye Tian asked. Yun Mengyuan nodded. "I've heard of them, but I've never seen one." "This is a ferocious beast that uses a camouflage talent to masquerade as a human," Ye Tian said. "For a beast to dare impersonate a person, that's audacity." With that he surged forward, his momentum slamming into Chen Fei. Chen Fei, sensing exposure, vanished in an instant. Yun Mengli and the others stared in disbelief. Chen Fei had slipped away right under their noses, and none of them had felt any spiritual presence. The only explanation that made sense was terrifying. Chen Fei himself must be a ferocious beast in disguise. Or worse, the beast had taken Chen Fei's form, and the real Chen Fei was already dead. "Trying to run?" Ye Tian sneered. The opponent's method was certainly strange. Even his divine sense had barely registered them. Still, thanks to his replication talent, the other party's abilities were laid bare to him at a glance. Species, hellbeast, bloodline, extraordinary talents, camouflage, top, magic, primary, stealth, top, dark spear, top. Even on paper, this creature was terrifying. An extraordinary bloodline meant it could one day reach Beast King status. Even now, at the advanced beast tier, those top-level talents made it lethal. Camouflage and stealth at peak rank let it vanish from sight, and dark spear, clearly an offensive gift, made any ambush deadly. Without a way to counter its invisibility, even king or holy level opponents would have great difficulty detecting it. "Die." Ye Tian's voice was calm. With a single sharp motion of his finger, a thread of force shot out, poof, and struck the hell beast clean through. Its invisibility collapsed like a burned mirage, and the creature toppled to the ground. Everyone stared. Where there should have been a monster, they now saw Chen Fei, who had been human, lying dead, his body grotesquely transformed into that of a ferocious beast. The creature's body wasn't large, only about a meter tall, covered in white fur, part cat, part tiger. Its identity, however, was unmistakable. "A ferocious beast," someone cried. Yun Meng was livid. A whole group of their king-level beasts had been fooled by a higher-level wild beast, and even after Ye Tian exposed it, they'd still tried to defend it. The king-class beasts bowed and rushed out apologies. "Lord Ye Tian, it was our mistake. Please forgive us." One of them hurried on. "It's nothing. Step back for now. I'll take the body of this beast." Ye Tian waved them off, scooped up the corpse, and pocketed the beast's storage pouch. There were plenty of empty dwellings nearby. He picked one at random and moved in. Then he set the beast's body out again and began extracting its abilities. "Invisibility, copy," he announced. "Camouflage, copy." He copied those two talents in succession. He already possessed a camouflage talent himself, but it was only the high-level version. This top-tier camo, Uflage, was far more refined. Soon, both new talents had been integrated into his repertoire. Both talents had merged successfully. Ye Tian tested them at once. The camouflage ability now let him take the form of all kinds of ferocious beasts, rat, lion, dog, no longer limited to humanoid beasts. It was far superior to the old high camouflage skill. The stealth talent stunned him. Once he activated it, he vanished completely. Not only was his body invisible, but his spiritual energy left no trace, and his divine consciousness became undetectable. Only a special talent specifically designed to suppress invisibility, or someone powerful enough to see through the void, could detect him. Short of that, there was essentially no way to spot someone with a top-tier stealth talent. Two such abilities together were devastating. Ye Tian smiled. The Hell Beast had been extremely unlucky to cross him, and the fierce beasts would feel the loss keenly. A Hell Beast of that rank was no ordinary asset among their ranks. Then, Ye Tian pulled out the storage pouch, Chen Fei's pouch, which the Hell Beast had been using, convinced there might be treasure inside. He probed it with his divine consciousness. The barrier gave way, and he scanned the contents. Something about one small object made his heart skip. It was a bead humming with a strange, watery aura. "Water Dragon Ball!" He breathed. The recognition hit him like a blow. The Water Dragon Ball radiated that peculiar water mystery scent that lured sea beasts. Any creature that caught it would be drawn here. Its influence, however, only reached so far. If the bead had been broadcasting over a greater range, the deep-sea monsters, the saint-level leviathans, would have answered the call, and even Cloud Dream wouldn't have been able to hold them back. Relief flooded him. If he hadn't shown up when he did and uncovered the Hell Beast's scheme, that creature would have used the Dragon Ball to draw countless sea beasts in, and the whole place would have been overrun. Ye Tian left the Water Dragon Ball inside his storage bag. He didn't dare take it out. The moment it appeared, there was a good chance it would draw the attention of the sea's ferocious beasts. Still, danger was likely regardless, so he planned to remain on site for about half a month to be sure the area was clear before moving on. During that time, he focused entirely on cultivation. He practiced the Golden Body alchemy technique from the Golden Body Yuanli secret tome. Its effects were far superior to the Qingyuan alchemy soul technique he had used before, but that didn't mean progress came quickly. Opening the brain domain proved painfully slow. He couldn't simply force the brain domain open by pouring in Yuan Qi. At his current level, he had to rely on the method itself to stimulate his divine consciousness, and that process consumed spiritual power rather than raw Yuan Qi. Even so, the awakening was incremental. The first fraction of a % of the deep brain domain to open would immediately begin to siphon a tremendous amount of Yuan Qi, using it to temper his entire body and boost his strength, defense, and speed. Being in an advanced cultivation chamber helped somewhat. It reduced the time needed to absorb Yuan Qi, so his progress was a little faster than it would have been elsewhere, but it was still slow and painstaking work. Ye Tian's external training, and even the little cultivation chamber he used outside, had almost no real effect. The top-tier or advanced cultivation rooms were what really benefited Xiao Blood and Ye Yu. In the end, progress at the saint level is determined by two things, the Gongfa and talent accounts for roughly 90% of the difference. A treasure that can help open the brain domain can speed things up, but such items are rare. Ye Tian himself only had one such treasure, a single bottle he'd found in the temple space, and it wouldn't last long. Given that limitation, He estimated that without a major opportunity, reaching the divine level would take him at least 10 years. 10 years. Ye Tian felt the weight of that number keenly. Opening his brain domain was painfully slow, partly because of his Shi-Sun level talent. If he had a Huai-Yue level talent, it would take at least 50 years to reach the peak of the Saint Realm. If he were only Morning Star level, it might take centuries, or even millennia. Since the typical lifespan of a Saint-level cultivator is only about 1,000 years, a Morning Star talent would almost certainly run out of time before ever reaching the Saint Peak, let alone the Imperial level. Still, 10 years wasn't nothing. With a threefold time acceleration, the actual time needed to break through to the Saint Peak would be just over 3 years. But that mode consumes life 3 times faster, so those 3 years would effectively cost 10 years of lifespan. Ye Tian had roughly 1,500 years to work with, so spending a few extra years of life to reach the Saint Peak was well worth it. This trade-off was more than acceptable. This was only the most basic form of time talent. If he could awaken a higher level of time talent, he might reach Holy Rank Extreme within a year. With the right treasures to help open his brain domain, that time span could be shortened even more. For the next several days, Ye Tian kept pushing himself, using triple time acceleration repeatedly to advance his brain domain. 10 days later, the deep brain domain's development finally ticked up to 2%. Under its influence, his body suddenly broke through its old limits. His flesh and marrow ravenously absorbed Yuan Qi, and his physical strength shot up to the equivalent of 20,000 elephants. Previously, he could only muster the power of 10 Vientian. After this breakthrough, that measure leapt dramatically. Roughly an order of magnitude in that metric, and his overall combat strength roughly doubled. The change hit like a surge. When Ye Tian withdrew, the beast world on the other side of the spatial rift was not far away. Above the vast forest, 2 enormous ferocious beasts hovered in the void, gazing down at the tier in space below. One of the fiercest creatures there had golden eyes and a massive, hulking frame, a giant ape. It radiated such raw power that the lesser beasts crawled before it, and even the king beasts dared not move. It wasn't a holy-grade creature, it was an imperial-grade fierce beast. Beside it stood another monster of equal stature. That alone marked it as extraordinary. Its appearance was identical to the nether beast Ye Tian had killed. If Ye Tian were here, he would have recognized it at once as a saint-level nether esper beast. Its talent was deadly enough to wipe out ordinary emperor-grade beasts, and even the top emperor-level predators would think twice before trying to slay it. Because of that status, the imperial ape treated it with unusual caution. "Hades, how did your junior mission go?" someone called out. The giant ape King Kong opened its mouth, and the words came out in human language. Then, with a disdainful snort, it snapped, "King Kong? Why use human speech? I don't like it." The next sound it made was not human at all, but a guttural, echoing beast voice that rolled through the air like thunder, the language of beasts itself. "I really like human language," King Kong rumbled with an odd fondness. "It's just a small difference. Let's not get hung up on it. Contact your descendants. A new world would be a tremendous asset for our ape-dragon beast realm. It might be the chance we need to go further." "I understand," the other answered. "I know how important a whole new world could be. I will try to contact my juniors." The void replied instantly and sent out a bloodline spell, reaching through the lay of kinship for any sign of its descendant. Its features shifted as the spell returned with terrible news. "No," it said, voice gone cold. "My descendants cannot be reached. The bloodline link is severed. It has fallen." A murderous rage swelled within it, vast and ancient. The underworld stirred, a hunger for slaughter aimed straight at the human realm, not just for conquest, but for vengeance. The Void's clan was painfully small, scarcer than a handful, always teetering on the brink of extinction. For the sake of strategy, they had permitted only a descendant of great warrior caliber to cross into the human world, even personally instructing that descendant in human knowledge. Now that carefully laid plan lay in ruins. A ferocious beast had pried a human's memory, and with it unearthed a piece of forbidden wisdom that should never have been found. The secret had been passed on, and now one of my descendants is dead. Hades' roar split the sky. The heavens trembled, the The shockwave wiped out countless lesser beasts, a brutal demonstration of his fury. King Kong hurried forward. Hades, you told me your descendants were nearly impossible to kill, that they would complete the task without fail. How could this happen? One of your clan is gone. I don't know how it was done, Hades snapped, voice cold as iron. But it's done. What do you propose? Revenge, Hades growled. King Kong ground his teeth. I've already contacted several allies among the beasts. The enemy must still be hiding in the spatial rift. When the time is right, I'll go after him and kill him in midair. Will that satisfy you? Hades' eyes narrowed. If you cross the dimensional boundary, you'll be wounded. Badly. It will take you at least 10 years to recover. Are you willing to pay that price? King Kong swallowed and forced a bitter smile. I am. The invitation had come from it. The dark sky had been summoned by an authority, and even the decision to let the dark sky's descendants slip into the human world was made under its watch. This region lay squarely within its domain, and if anything went wrong here, responsibility would fall to it. If the being responsible were only a saint-level cultivator, it might be able to shrug off the wrath of another power, even consume the offender outright. But it could not destroy the underworld. To cross the underworld would bring consequences that no one in their right mind would accept. Even if it had to pay a price, it had to placate the underworld. On top of that, it had suffered a serious loss. One of its most precious treasures, a water dragon ball, had been taken. In the hands of a feral beast with dragon blood, that artifact could drive the creature to desperate heights. Even if the ball itself was of little direct use to its original owner, its value and danger were plain. Now that the treasure had fallen into human hands, the only acceptable solution was to eliminate the human and send the feral beasts to retrieve the water dragon ball. I'll be waiting for your news, it said. Silence settled over the dark void. King Kong wasted no time. He began contacting allied beasts, using favors and opportunities to entice them. A simple truth governed the wild places. When there was profit to be had, even hostile beasts could be persuaded to help. Not long after, 3 Emperor-level fierce beasts arrived. King Kong, we're here! They shouted as they took their places before him. I need you to rip a rift in space, King Kong said. Just wide enough, and only for 3 seconds, so I can fire and kill the enemy in midair. What's the reward? The 3 asked in unison. To you. King Kong produced 3 elixirs that could refine and strengthen a blood vein, handing one to each of them. The beast's eyes brightened. We accept. For creatures of their rank, tearing a slit in the fabric of space wasn't difficult, but it wasn't without cost. They would suffer violent backlash, temporary physical trauma, and debilitating after-effects that could take up to a year to fully recover from. Still, trading a year of weakness for an elixir that could enhance their blood veins was a bargain they were more than willing to make. Begin, King Kong ordered. The air trembled and then roared as the 3 beasts launched into the task, forces gathering to tear open the void. The 3 Emperor-level fierce beasts unleashed their full power and slammed into the spatial rift. Their terrifying beast energy battered the tier, and the rip in space, previously only that of a 1-star fissure, began to widen. Chapter 165. A spatial rift had opened at one end of the Earth. Ye Tian felt the vibration in space for the first time. His spatial senses flared and spread outward. Almost immediately, he detected a disturbance at the rift. Panic shot through him. An Emperor-level aura was emanating from the crack. He shot into the air. His divine consciousness stretched for thousands of miles as he broadcasted to everyone below. An Emperor-level ferocious beast is tearing through the spatial rift. Everyone evacuate the summit formation. Inside the castle, Yun Mengyuan froze when he heard Ye Tian's voice. Emperor-level? Some king-level cultivators might be unfamiliar with the true danger, but Yun Mengyuan had been to the Zhonghai superbase. He knew exactly what that meant. Above king-level came holy-level. Above holy-level came emperor-level. An emperor-level beast could annihilate king-level men with a single breath. Get out, he yelled. He threw caution, face, and pride to the wind. None of that mattered now, and dashed out of the summit formation. When Yun Mengli left, the Blood King and the Qing King, both sovereigns, also realized what an emperor-level fierce beast meant and fled immediately. The other kings didn't know exactly what had happened, but when they saw Yun Mengli, the Qing king, and the Blood King all retreating, they naturally followed suit. In moments, a group of king-level masters had fallen back into the main formation, and the mages pulled out as well. Only one person remained atop the formation, watching the situation unfold. Blood King, what is an emperor-level fierce beast? A puzzled king-level asked. The Blood King drew a long breath. A being countless times stronger than us. It could kill me with a single breath. One strike from an emperor-level fierce beast could annihilate our entire base. A cold silence fell. Many of the kings involuntarily drew in a sharp, stunned breath as the meaning of his words sank in. Yun Meng muttered, "An emperor-grade beast shouldn't be able to get out of a tiny one-star spatial rift. If this thing keeps expanding, though, the danger will only grow." "Let's hope it's a false alarm," the Green King said grimly. The other kings were visibly tense. All eyes were fixed on the rift inside the central formation. At the first sign of any change, they would abandon the place in an instant. Inside the formation, Ye Tian stood before a spatial tier 3,000 meters wide. He stared at it intently, feeling the imprint of 3 emperor-level beasts pressing against the barrier from the other side. Their breath was like pressure on the space itself, testing and tearing. Crack! The rift split and widened with frightening speed, first swelling into a 3-star spatial crack and then immediately escalating into a 4-star breach. Yunmeng, Qing Wang, and Blood King stared in shock. If the rift really opened to 4-star, a holy-grade fierce beast could come through, something they had no way to stop. "The array mages! Activate the Great Array!" several of the kings shouted. At once, the array mages of renown rallied together and began to stir the Grand Array, their formations and mystic threads flaring as they worked to seal the widening tier. "Useless," one of the senior mages shouted. "Helpless. It's no use. The main array has been corrupted by a terrible force. It can't suppress the space rift." Fortunately, the rift didn't widen into a full 4-star tear. It only reached the peak of 3-star level, but that was still enough to alarm everyone. A crack like that could spew hordes of king-class beasts, even groups of invincible king beasts. Many of the kings present stiffened at the thought. Then a voice cut through the tension. "Holy human! He did it! He killed my descendants!" A massive hand thrust out of the rift. As it pushed through, the distorted energies of the tier and the opposing realm's forces snapped and cracked along its length. This was no human hand. It was the paw of a savage beast. The great, hulking hand of a giant ape, a golden spear, manifested in that huge fist, the weapon clearly a metal-class innate talent. "Holy human, die!" A golden spear screamed through the air toward Ye Tian. It moved so fast, it beat his reflexes by a mile. If it pierced him, he thought, his top-tier healing gift wouldn't save him. The attacker couldn't be an ordinary beast. It was an emperor-level monster, terrifying enough that it would hurl itself at him even while wounded. Worse, 3 other emperor-grade beasts had been tearing open a spatial rift to get at him. There was only one reason they'd go to such lengths. He remembered the creature he'd killed earlier, a beast with an extraordinary origin, found and slain inside a honeycombed lair. Now another beast had appeared, claiming he'd killed its offspring, an elder of the Hades beasts, likewise a Hades-level terror. Between that elder, the injured spear wielder, and the 3 emperor beasts ripping the space, he'd provoked at least 5 formidable enemies. They were trying every means to kill him. "Teleport!" Ye Tian snapped and activated his spatial talent. The enemy hadn't come in person. A colossal hand had reached across the boundary instead, and because the attack came through that rift, its speed was slower, just enough for Ye Tian to seize the opportunity. In an instant, he teleported away from the upper formation and reappeared thousands of miles away. The golden spear missed him by a hair. It slammed into the formation behind him. Boom! The formation shattered completely. The mages inside were hurled backward, coughing up blood. Several of the weaker ones didn't survive the backlash. The golden spear then vanished into the sky. If that spear had struck the earth, its force would have been cataclysmic. The ground could have split, and the annihilating power would have swept the entire field, enough to fell kings for thousands of miles. Fortunately, that was not what happened. "No!" King Kong, the master behind the giant hand, roared in fury. He had paid an enormous price for that attack. How could he not be angry at its failure? The spatial rift began to contract. The huge hand cracked. A thin trail of blood of an emperor-level fierce beast, ran down its fingers. Soon the rift closed completely, and the residue of the failed assault hung in the air like a bitter, unfinished threat. The giant hand vanished, leaving only the furious roars of the King Kong and the Hell Beast echoing in the air. With the main formation gone, the tear in space began to shrink, but only down to the size of an ordinary 3-star rift, not all the way back to a 1-star crack. In a breath, Ye Tian teleported back. Yunmengli stood frozen for a long moment, then finally shook off his shock and fear and flew up to stand before him. "Lord Ye Tian, was that an emperor-grade beast that just struck?" Yunmengli blurted. "Yes." Ye Tian's voice was steady but tight. "An emperor-grade ferocious beast, and not a common one. I didn't expect it to attack me while I was airborne." He looked a little shaken, though not terrified. If the beast had come in person, he would have been in mortal danger, but only a single hand had manifested. "Do you think it will attack again?" Yunmengli asked, voice thin. The Blood King, visibly uneasy, answered, "It shouldn't in the immediate future." Ye Tian nodded. He suspected the opponent wouldn't renew the assault yet. The enemy's trans-dimensional passage had been damaged, and the blood left behind was proof of that. But he couldn't be completely certain. When Ye Tian finished speaking, the Blood King, the Qing King, Yunmengli, and the others did not relax. Instead, their whole bodies shook. If they couldn't kill it quickly, it would strike again. That had been a blow from an emperor-level ferocious beast. How could they possibly stop another one? Chapter 166. "Lord Ye Tian, you actually dodged a strike from an emperor-grade beast just now. Did you use teleportation?" the Blood King asked, curious. There were a few martial artists with spatial talents stationed across the 3 major bases, but most of their gifts were weak, primary or inferior spatial abilities that had little effect. Genuine teleportation required at least a mid-level spatial talent. Teleportation was one of those anti-celestial techniques that effectively ignored time and speed. Ye Tian didn't deny it. Everyone had seen what happened. It was obvious. "Yes," he answered simply. "Lord Ye Tian, if you can teleport like that, even an emperor-grade blow can't touch you." Yunmeng's voice carried a mixture of relief and urgency. The top formation that had held the spatial rift had been shattered. If that rift reopened, more king beasts could pour through. They were already trying to re-establish the formation, but even if no more emperor-grade beasts appeared, a flood of king beasts would put them under immense pressure. "Please, Lord Ye Tian," Yunmeng said quickly, turning to him. "Stay here. If any powerful king beast comes through, kill it. We'll reforge the formation as fast as we can." Yunmeng's plea was raw with fear. He wasn't hiding it. None of them were. The thought of another breach, another swarm, tightened the air around them. Ye Tian met his gaze for a moment, the decision hanging in the space between them. They were afraid Ye Tian might leave. If they had to fight a king-level beast, the emperor-level creature would surely strike again, and without Ye Tian's teleportation ability, they wouldn't be able to escape. Everything still depended on him. They also suspected the emperor-level attack had something to do with that invisible, shape-shifting beast Ye Tian had found. Even so, they didn't blame him. If he hadn't discovered and killed it, they might already have been annihilated. By slaying that creature, Ye Tian had not only saved them, but protected the 3 major bases. Yes, his action had drawn the attention of an emperor-level beast, but that creature hadn't been able to close the distance, and it wasn't impossible to deal with. Humans and fierce beasts were mortal enemies, and they weren't fools. No one wanted to blame Ye Tian. He was saint-level while they were only king-level. Who were they to judge him? One of them promised, "Don't worry, we'll stay for a while." Ye Tian nodded. Ye Tian's expression tightened, not because he feared the emperor-level beast, but because he feared wasting time. He couldn't stay here forever. If they struck from the air, that emperor-level fiend wouldn't be able to use that move more than a few times before it died. In any case, it wouldn't be long, at most half a month to a month, before it made another move. Whether that move could kill him or not, the counterattack should finish the beast for good. He braced himself. The next assault might be even more terrifying, but he wasn't afraid. On the other side of the space rift, in the fierce beast world, the Emperor-class beast, King Kong's breath had grown shallow, and the three-headed Emperor-level creature that had torn open the rift had been driven back and badly wounded. King Kong, I'm wounded. I have to retreat and recover. King Kong, I must leave. No matter what price you offer, we can't expose it. The backlash would be catastrophic and would destroy our foundation. No treasure could make up for that. King Kong, forget it. You've gone too far. The airstrike failed. That human can teleport. You can't catch him. The three Emperor-level, three-headed ferocious beasts spoke in turn and withdrew. Teleport, someone shouted. The human vanished. King Kong ground his teeth in fury and surprise. The human had escaped by teleporting. If it had been only a mid-grade spatial talent, he wouldn't have slipped away like that. This was the mark of a high spatial talent. King Kong knew the rules of the Void Realm too well. In this place, a high spatial talent made a human saint nearly ouchable. He turned to Hades, helplessness in his voice. Hades, as you can see, that human likely has a high spatial talent. I don't think I can kill him. Hades' expression hardened. The blood debt of my descendants must still be collected, he said. If you cannot finish him, I will call in an emperor with supreme spatial talent. With that strike, even a human saint of high spatial ability will fall. If we do it this way, the whole thing will come to light, I said. I wouldn't have suggested it otherwise. King Kong's eyes narrowed. You mean an emperor-level beast with top-tier spatial talent? His face went white. Emperor-level, the Void Devourer, Emperor Ling? He was shaking. Emperor Ling, sometimes called D. Ling, was notorious. Among the emperor-rank feral beasts of the ape-dragon beast world, few inspired as much dread. His mastery of space made him deadly even to other powerful creatures. An encounter with Emperor Ling could easily be fatal. Since he had only recently broken into the Emperor realm, his power was still terrifyingly concentrated. Matched against a beast of equal standing, one clean strike from him could end a life. He was that kind of nightmare. I was lucky enough to get to know D. Ling, I admitted. I convinced him to help us. I explained fast, because I could see King Kong calculating the risk. Dai Ling can tear open the seams of space and suppress spatial energy with nothing but his presence. He can make a breach we can use, but he won't attack a human. He refuses to pay that price. He helped only so far as to create the opening and contain the space. The final strike has to come from you. King Kong stared at me, still disbelieving. You want me to do the kill? If you agree, I said, I'll notify him and set everything in motion. Hades, King Kong paused, then said in a deep voice, I'll take another shot, but let me rest a bit first. I can't fire twice in such quick succession without recovering. All right, I'll wait, Hades replied. King Kong produced a string of elixirs, each one a 10,000-year rarity, and swallowed one. The potion mended the wounds caused by his earlier exertion. The effects were visible as his injuries slowly closed and his breathing grew stronger. Gradually, the weakness left him. 25 days passed. With the time acceleration set to 3 times, those 25 days counted as 75 days of cultivation. Ye Tian felt the results immediately. His deep brain domain had opened to 4%, his physical strength climbed to 400,000, and his power had doubled once more. Ye Tian clenched his fist, pleased with the progress. His cultivation had strengthened significantly, and his spatial talent had improved as well. If an emperor-level ferocious beast struck again, he knew he would be able to teleport away far more easily. Ye Tian felt a chill of foreboding. The emperor-level fierce beasts would likely come for revenge soon. If that happened right when his talent replication cooldown ended, he might be able to copy a valuable emperor-level talent. He let himself hope. On the other side, King Kong had just finished dressing minor wounds. The suppression that had stifled his anti-devouring defenses was beginning to lift, and he could strike again. Dark Sky, he called to his companion. I can fight now. Summon D. Ling. Understood, Hades replied. Using the private, instinctive method fierce beasts use to communicate, he sent out the call. Within mere tens of seconds, a new figure materialized before them, the void-devouring emperor, D. Ling. D. Ling was 10 meters long, his hide a dark, burnished gold. His head looked disproportionately large, almost half the length of his body, giving him an odd, unsettling silhouette. Faint spatial patterns shimmered across his flanks, the unmistakable mark of a naturally gifted space-type fierce beast. Lord Diling, King Kong greeted him with unexpected deference. In the beast world, strength commands respect. Diling's power towered so far above the others that even something as feared as Hades had to answer to him. Ignoring the restless, hulking King Kong at his side, Diling fixed his gaze on the void and spoke plainly. Hades, I want you to try it. Hades' reply was sharp, edged with old pain. Why should I help you? You tore open the space rift and slaughtered my descendants. Diling listened without flinching. When Hades finished, he explained, calm and precise. I understand why you resent me. I'm not asking you to take revenge. I only ask that you use your space confinement ability once to seal the enemy's spatial power. With my attainment of the highest level of spatial talent, the human saint-level spatial techniques will be rendered useless. They won't be able to use their space powers. If you block their spatial ability even briefly, King Kong can finish him. For a moment, the silence hummed with tension. Then King Kong bowed his massive head. Thank you, Emperor Ling, he rumbled. Diling met Hades' eyes. Only once, he repeated, like a promise and a warning in one. Chapter 167. Diling stared at the fissure in the void. The human world, it's a pity this rift is so low grade. I can't really pass through, otherwise I'd go there in a heartbeat, he murmured. He didn't say the words idly. Gathering a field of spatial energy, he pushed it toward the crack. The rift quivered, then began to split wider. The three major bases had just rebuilt a supreme formation and were once again suppressing the tier, but Diling's force shredded the barrier. The top array collapsed like paper. The space rift on the Earth side tore open. Ye Tian was the first on that end to sense the anomaly. Other king-level beasts around him felt the disturbance too, and dread spread through them like a chill wind. They all understood what the change meant. Emperor-level fierce beasts were mobilizing for another assault. If they didn't retreat now, they would be courting death. It was a bitter irony. The Supreme Formation had just been reinforced, only to be rendered useless again. The three major bases would have to pay heavily in material and manpower for another reconstruction. Before they could formulate any plan, many of the king-level beasts suddenly found themselves frozen in place. They couldn't move, couldn't flee. Rumble. A spatial force locked the void in place. Under that pressure, the king-level fighters couldn't even move their bodies. Not an eyelid, not a limb, only their minds remained active. Freeze the void. What kind of ability is this? They muttered in alarm. They had never seen power like it. Only Ye Tian understood immediately. This was space confinement, one of the signature techniques of a top space talent. It can arrest a whole pocket of space. Damn, we can't move, he thought. He forced his will into teleportation, but the confinement suppressed it. He could still shift his body, but movement was agonizingly slow. Then a small claw stretched out from the crack in space. The claw belonged to whoever had unleashed the confinement. Ye Tiankai's heart jumped. A top space talent was on the other side. Without hesitation, he activated his own replication talent. Its effective range was 2,000 meters. In an instant, he closed the gap, moving from 3,000 meters to almost 2,000. At the same moment, a giant hand, King Kong's, shot forward. A golden spear materialized in that hand. King Kong was about to strike. Quick! Ye Tian panicked. Only 2,000 meters to go. He glanced over Diling's appraisal in an instant. Species, Void Eater bloodline talent, glowing moon level, spatial talent, top tier. This Void Eater had only one special gift, its spatial talent, and nothing else. But that spatial talent was top tier, terrifyingly unfair. Top spatial talents encompass things like spatial perception, spatial imprinting, portable pocket spaces, teleportation, the space blade, and spatial confinement. In particular, teleportation, the space blade, and spatial confinement together could erase a creature's major weaknesses. If a Void Eater's space ability wasn't restricted, it was almost impossible to beat. Copy. With a single thought, Ye Tian duplicated that top-tier spatial talent. At the same moment, King Kong launched his attack. Human Saint, die! The golden spear lunged forward. The Void Eater's space confinement didn't bother to actively try to slow the spear, so its velocity remained largely unhindered. Ye Tian could not dodge the golden spear. Even with his time ability, the spear's speed was too great. His basic temporal talent simply couldn't react fast enough. He had no way to evade it, except for one last card. "Substitute for death," he shouted, and unleashed his trump. The substitute for death talent was unlike ordinary spatial arts. It did not rely on space. It operated outside space-time, and so could not be blocked by any confinement or ceiling of the area. The only thing that could nullify it was an attack on the soul itself. If his soul were annihilated in the instant of activation, the substitute could not be launched. But neither Dai Lin, Ji, nor King Kong possessed that kind of soul-killing technique. They couldn't touch his spirit. The talent activated successfully. In an instant, Ye Tian and the prepared substitute switched places. Physically, he was whisked away. The decoy took his position, and the lethal spear struck where Ye Tian had stood. But the swap was imperfect. It involved bodies, not belongings. Clothes, pouches, and storage bags did not move with the souls. Ye Tian's body and mind were exchanged, but his outer garments and the items tied to his person remained where they were. For a heartbeat, everything went as he'd hoped. The spear slammed into the figure that had been standing in his place. The decoy screamed and crumpled. Ye Tian's breath came faster in the new body, safe, alive, wherever the substitute had been waiting. Then he noticed the cost. The clothes and the storage pouch that had been at his original position were still there, vulnerable, and now torn and blackened from the impact. His personal effects, the things that held his pills, his minor tools, the artifacts he'd been carrying, had not been transferred. Dai Ling's golden spear had smashed through the gear that had remained behind. Whatever had been inside was now exposed, possibly destroyed. Dai Ling and King Kong hesitated for a moment, realization dawning in their eyes. The trick had worked. The man before them was not the real Ye Tian, but his belongings were left behind and were now wreckage to be searched or ruined. They could either press the attack or seize and examine what remained. Ye Tian's relief was immediate but fragile. He had traded his life for his gear. He was alive but disarmed and displaced, with whatever advantage the storage contained gone or compromised. Around him, the battlefield shivered with the consequences of that one impossible substitution. Most of Ye Tian's treasures had already been moved into his portable space. Ever since the carry-on space had expanded, it could hold nearly everything. His storage pouch now contained only a few ordinary items and low-value resources. Then, without warning, a golden spear pierced Ye Tian. A terrifying force detonated through him. His body shattered under the impact and slowly crumbled as it floated in midair. From the rent in space, the king beasts poured through, creatures sent by King Kong. Under King Kong's orders, they swarmed the broken body, tore off several of Ye Tian's storage pouches, and carried them back through the rift into the world of fierce beasts. The spatial restraint vanished. The Emperor-level beast withdrew, and one after another the ferocious beasts charged forward, as if preparing for a renewed assault. Yunmeng's whole body trembled. "Lord Ye Tian has fallen?" he whispered. Ye Tian had been a holy-level cultivator, an extraordinary prodigy who had reached that rank in such a short time. The sight of his destruction left Yunmeng shaken to the core. "Push the beasts back, now," the Blood King barked. "The Emperor-level creatures can't strike again, but if we lose the space rift, we'll lose the 3 main bases. We can't let Lord Ye Tian's sacrifice be for nothing." The other king-level beasts snapped to action. If the rift closed or widened uncontrolled, their strongholds would be in grave danger. "Kill!" they roared in unison and surged forward. Because the space crack was still unstable, only a handful of fierce beasts poured through. The kings cut them down swiftly, and the surviving mages were hurriedly summoned to arrange the top-level ceiling array. In the ape-dragon beast world, every second counted. "Lord Kong, take these," one of the king beasts said, thrusting several storage pouches at the smaller, weaker King Kong. King Kong took them, intending to refine the pouches and claim whatever was inside, but the pouches wouldn't yield. He frowned and tried again. "Strange," he muttered. "That human is definitely dead. There should be no reason these can't be refined. Do human storage pouches become difficult to refine after their owners die?" King Kong didn't know much about the human world or their artifacts. He had never encountered human storage pouches before, so he only felt puzzled. He didn't suspect anything beyond his own ignorance. The Emperor-level beast pressed its tremendous power into the spirit seal on the storage bag, tearing it open by force. When the pouch sprang apart, however, its prize was gone. King Kong stood dumbfounded. How could a human of saint rank be so useless? Where was the water dragon ball? Then the realization hit him. The human had spatial talent. He must have kept the Dragon Ball in a private spatial pocket, not the ordinary pouch. But that only made things worse. Those carry spaces were bound to their owner's innate space ability. The moment the saint died, the spatial talent would vanish and the pocket would collapse. Anything inside would be tossed into the turbulence between spaces, scattered and effectively lost. "This is intolerable," King Kong snarled. "That human, if I ever set foot in the human world, I'll slaughter them all." His roar tore across the land, shaking the air for thousands of miles. Neither King Kong nor Ling suspected the truth. Ye Tian was not dead. What they had destroyed was only a death decoy, a substitute meant to take the blow in his place. Near the great base of the Demon Sea, in a cavern hollowed out of the mountains, Ye Tian awoke on a rough stone slab. He pushed himself upright, the stale air and dim light making the shadows on the cavern walls shiver. He ran his hands over his body. No wounds, no broken bones. Everything felt whole. A cold smile crossed his face. "So everyone thinks I'm dead," he thought. The realization settled in, and instead of fear, he felt a rush of triumph. He had come away with something priceless, a top-tier spatial talent. The discovery hit him like a rush of warm blood. This harvest would change everything. Chapter 168. Ye Tian had searched for a top-tier space talent many times before, but never found so much as a trace. At best, he'd come across a high-level space talent once by chance in the fierce beast world. So when it finally duplicated today as a top-tier space talent, it was entirely unexpected and costly. He'd had to use his death-type talent once to make it happen. He considered the price worth paying. The death talent was a stopgap that didn't really increase his combat power, but a true top-tier space talent would. Teleportation range, the cutting force of a space blade, all would be amplified many times over. In the small cave he began the fusion. Exhaustion clung to him, but he pushed through. Before long the process completed. The top-tier space talent had fused successfully. Still panting, Ye Tian activated it. A sudden wave of spatial fluctuations rolled outward, sweeping across thousands of miles and locking the area in place, the space itself frozen. Space is always flowing, he thought, like air. A confinement space stops that flow. In a frozen field like this, weak people couldn't move at all. Even the strong would find their power greatly reduced. Ye Tian understood that immediately. Space confinement and the space blade could be used together. First freeze the void, then strike with the space blade to crush the enemy's body and kill them in a single blow. Ye Tian paced the possibilities through his head. He suspected why the Void Eater hadn't used the space blade to finish him off. To fire the space blade while he was suspended in midair would require an enormous expenditure, and the Void Eater had come only as backup. It wasn't willing to pay that price, so it limited itself to a supporting role rather than going all out. If the Void Eater had unleashed the space blade at the same moment it cast space confinement, even a timely activation of Ye Tian's substitute death talent might not have been enough to counter such an ultimate spatial technique. It was basically luck that saved him. With his own top-tier spatial talent, Ye Tian knew how dangerous that combination could be. Among the saints, few could rival him, and even some emperors, if struck head-on by his space blade, might not survive. The strength of a space blade didn't come from raw attack power so much as from its manipulation of space itself. Against an emperor-rank opponent, spatial damage could not be directly resisted. Only someone beyond emperor rank could simply ignore it. That said, an emperor could still evade the blade, and Ye Tian's space blade, as fast as it was, wasn't quick enough to strike an emperor head-on. After resting for half a day, Ye Tian slipped back toward the tier in space, invisible. When he arrived, he found the mages arranging a formation around the rift. More corpses of fierce beasts lay scattered on the ground, proof that a battle had taken place after he left. The king-rank cultivators kept their distance, unwilling to approach the crack in space. Ye Tian remained hidden. He didn't want the beasts to realize he was alive. He drifted close to Yunmengli and sent his voice through his divine consciousness. Yunmengli! At the sound of Ye Tian's voice, Yunmengli stiffened. The tone was unmistakable. It was his voice. Lord Ye Tian, is that you? She whispered. Everyone had seen it. A golden spear had driven through Ye Tian, his body collapsing to the ground, and the corpse was taken away. They were certain he was dead. Then Ye Tian spoke, quiet but steady. I'm not dead. The body pierced by the golden spear was a fake I made. The real me used a secret concealment spell. Because Emperor-class beasts from the other world can't cross over, everyone let their guard down and assumed I'd been killed. He paused, then added, Don't spread the news that I'm still alive. At most, only the Blood King and the Qing King should be told. I had intended to stay hidden, but you will all go to the Zhonghai superbase sooner or later and would find out anyway, so I might as well tell you now. Lord Ye Tian, thank the heavens you're alive. Yunmengli breathed with relief. If Ye Tian had truly died, the Demon Sea Grand Base would have been in grave danger. As long as Ye Tian lived, he remained the base's guardian. In any future crisis, they could turn to him for help. I'm returning to the Zhonghai superbase, Ye Tian said, and with that he departed. After he left, Yunmengli informed the Qing King and the Blood King of what had happened. At first they didn't believe it, but after a careful examination of Ye Tian's body, any doubt vanished. No matter how perfect the corpse looked at a glance, scrutiny revealed it wasn't a genuine human corpse. It had been dead for a very long time. Its blood was a mixture of feral beast ichor and some strange material essences, and the whole body showed clear signs of alchemical refinement. In short, it was a manufactured, refined corpse. Word of this was kept tightly controlled. Only Yunmengli, the Blood King, and the Qing King knew the truth. The other kings had no idea Ye Tian was still alive. Back at Zhonghai Superbase, Ye Tian returned and spent the next few days showing his sister around. He wanted her to settle in and cultivate without worry while he handled things on his own. He planned to go to the God of War Tower alone, for several reasons. The first was to take part in the Formation Assembly, an event that would raise his rank as an array mage. That promotion would allow him to construct a top-tier cultivation chamber, and once built, his sister's training speed would increase dramatically. The second goal was to perfect his understanding of sword intent. His sword aptitude had just risen to the Morning Star rank, and with the aid of the God of War Ares monument, he could finally refine his sword intent to perfection, bringing his golden-level sword technique to its absolute peak. The third objective was audacious but logical: break into the God of War Tower. Although he was a saint and no longer listed among the kings, he could still qualify for the sacred roster. With his current strength, ascending to the 9th floor of the tower's 8th layer would hardly raise any eyebrows, and every climb in the tower earned valuable merit points. Why not take advantage of that? Inside the Ares monument's inner chamber, Ye Tian set to work. He engaged the monument's temporal acceleration at triple speed and began studying formations without pause. After 3 days, he reached a major breakthrough, a 200th point of comprehension that officially elevated him to the ranks of top-tier formation mages. He then spent another 2 days refining 20 additional formations, bringing his mastered repertoire to 120 inscriptions. A formation mage capable of inscribing 120 formations was no lightweight among the elite. That level of mastery was more than enough to design and erect a high-grade cultivation chamber. Ye Tian halted the Enlightenment Array and turned his full attention to the enlightened sword intent. His Morning Star sword talent, together with the aid of the God of War monument, accelerated his comprehension by more than tenfold. Countless sword insights poured into his mind. His progress became visible by the hour. 5 days later, his sword intent was at 90%. 15 days after that, he broke into the realm of sword intent consummation. Only 85 points left, he muttered. Time to head back to the God of War Tower. Ye Tian exited the God of War monument space and stepped into the 8th floor challenge chamber of the tower. In combat, he was overwhelmingly superior. The black-clad warrior fell in an instant, but his frustration came from a different place. He was down to only 85 challenge points, and that scarcity left him feeling helpless even when the fights themselves were easy. 10 points! Ye Tian exclaimed in frustration. Jiling, I had 32 points before I broke through the 7th layer. Why am I only getting 10 points for breaking the 8th layer now? Jiling answered patiently. When you crossed the 7th layer, you were at king rank. Now you've reached saint rank. The point system changes with your tier. It wouldn't make sense to use the same rules for kings and saints. At the saint level, the rewards go like this. 8th layer, 10 points, 9th, 20, 10th, 40, 11th, 80, 12th, 160, and so on. The points double each layer, and how many you can earn depends on your strength. Ye Tian cursed inwardly. You heartless thing. But he had to admit the rule was reasonable. It would be absurd for king and saint ranks to follow the same point schedule. Chapter 169. Ye Tian kept pushing through the God of War Tower, 9th floor, 10th floor, 11th. His strength showed itself clearly as he broke through the 12th layer with ease. Reaching the 12th layer among the tower's holy levels was extremely rare. Many never made it that far. In truth, Ye Tian could have continued upward, but he stopped. For now, he had enough points. His total had climbed to 385, more than enough to receive a year of enlightenment from the God of War monument. The score also earned him a spot on the holy list, and not a low one at that. If he had pushed into the 13th layer, he would almost certainly have placed among the top 16. The thought of that was terrifying in its implications. Even just making it to the 12th floor, however, left everyone breathless. Outside the God of War Tower, all eyes were fixed on the 25th position on the holy list. 25th, Ye Tian, Scattered Cultivation Alliance, God of War Tower, 12th layer, Great Saint level. What then was Saint King level combat power? His attack power had reached the 100 dragon power mark, and his speed and defenses had kept pace. If speed or defense falls behind, even an attack strong enough for a Great Saint won't give you true Great Saint combat capability. On the Battle Saint Tower, sometimes called the Victory Tower, the 11th layer corresponds to Great Saint rank. Ye Tian had already broken through the 12th layer, putting him well above the average Great Saint. If he managed to conquer the 13th layer, he would attain Saint King status. In the entire Zhonghai Superbase, there are only 16 Saint Kings publicly known, perhaps a few more secretly hiding their true strength, but certainly no more than around 20 in total. Ye Tian's displayed power had already reached quasi-Saint King level, utterly crushing ordinary Great Saints. He had only just entered the Great Saint rank, which made his talent all the more astonishing. News of Ye Tian spread again through the Zhonghai Superbase, drawing the attention of many of the base's emperor-level figures. Before, when Ye Tian had been merely a king-level cultivator, the emperors hardly bothered with him. Now, however, he had surged into an unusually strong position and was closing in on Saint King's strength, a rise that naturally turned heads. By then, Ye Tian had already returned home and set about building top-tier cultivation chambers. He had gathered enough rare materials to construct 3 at once, one for himself, one for his sister, and a third to be shared by Xiao Blood, Xiao Jin, and Xiao Zi. In 3 days, the 3 chambers were finished. With a proper top-tier cultivation chamber and the first-rate, top-level Yuanli cultivation manual he possessed, there was no question how quickly Ye Tian would advance. He was already a grandmaster. It seemed only a matter of time before he reached the grandmaster peak and even began to press against the king level. In the 3rd chamber, Xiao Blood was seated in meditation, cultivating the Upanishad's method. Ye Tian stepped inside. Little Blood, I went out this time and brought back a treasure. I think it'll be useful to you. Look. Ye Tian produced the water dragon ball. It was a dragon ball infused with draconic water energy, and since Little Blood was a dragon, it should help him greatly. Little Blood stared at the orb with hungry eyes, practically trembling. Master, the water dragon ball contains so much draconic power. When I was born, I was undernourished, premature even, for the war-blood dragon clan. If I had this ball, I could make up for my deficiencies, become a true war-blood dragon. My talent would even transform. Master, you have to give it to me. It was meant for you. Eat it, Ye Tian said. He tossed the water dragon ball to Little Blood. Little Blood swallowed it in one gulp, a stream of pure dragon power poured from the orb and flowed straight into him. "Master, I'm starting to fall asleep. When I wake up, I'll definitely be stronger than you." Little Blood Love couldn't resist a parting jab at Ye Tian and drifted off with that challenge. Ye Tian, meanwhile, withdrew inward to cultivate, splitting his time between training 2 gold-grade sword techniques and occasionally slipping into the virtual arena through the God of War ring to test his strength and swordsmanship. Time passed quietly. Half a month later, thanks to his Morningstar sword technique talent and the 10% sword intention, Ye Tian had refined both gold-grade skills, the Heavenly Desert Sword domain and Instant Slash, to perfection. The perfected Tianhuang Knife domain, a gold-grade technique, multiplied his attack power 18-fold. That wasn't quite as large an amplification as the single-target boost typical of some gold-grade sword skills, but its value lay in being a wide-area, mass-attack technique. If it could match the single-strike gold skills multiplier, it would be truly unstoppable. The gold-grade sword technique had instantly matured to perfection, and its amplification was brutal. It multiplied his attack power by 20 and doubled his attack speed. On top of that, Ye Tian's deep brain domain had been opened to 5%, and his physical strength had soared to 500,000 units. He ran the numbers in his head. His body's raw strength amounted to roughly 0.5 dragon power, while his Yuan force contributed the equivalent of 1 dragon power. His pseudo-mystic power talent had reached 90%, which boosted his attack output by 80-fold, and his instant slash technique added another 20-fold increase. With the sword skill's amplification and the other multipliers, Ye Tian's single strongest strike now registered at about 1,1600 dragon strength. For reference, an attack of 1,000 dragon strength is considered Saint King level. Coupled with his exceptional spatial talent, Ye Tian was more than a match for opponents who relied on raw dragon strength alone. Even a Saint King class fighter boasting 2,000 dragon strength would not be his equal. Not counting the advantages granted by his supreme spatial talent, Ye Tian's true combat strength already matched the Saint King level. With that top-tier spatial gift activated, he was effectively unbeatable by anyone up to Saint King. Only an opponent beyond that, an Invincible King, could pose a real threat. My strength is already enough to form a faction, Ye Tian thought. He had entertained the idea before, but never acted on it. He'd been improving too quickly and changing locations too often, from Linhai Base to the Demon Sea Grand Base, and now to the Zhonghai Super Base. Constantly moving made it impossible to lay down roots, but now he planned to stay at Zhonghai for the foreseeable future. The Zhonghai Super Base was among the highest-level bases, so formidable that other bases, no matter how strong, couldn't match it. Settled here, Ye Tian finally decided it was the right time to build his own power within the Super Base. The advantage of building a power base is that you don't have to do everything yourself. You can let other people do the legwork and feed you information. If Ye Tian wants to know who possesses a particular power talent, like the Upanishads, he simply has his men inquire. Any news reaches him first. That saves him a lot of trouble. His followers can also range into the wilds or travel far to hunt fierce beasts. If they encounter a beast with an exceptional talent, Ye Tian will be informed. Without that network, he would have missed opportunities. For example, had he been acting alone when the Moon Saint Daughter's task appeared, he might never have learned about the beast with the time talent. No one would have told him. That's the practical benefit of influence. Another major strength Ye Tian enjoys is his ability to copy talents. He can verify everyone's abilities personally, so there's little chance of overlooking a genuine prodigy. Other factions rely on talent testing beads, but those can't detect every kind of talent. Many beads are specialized. A bead that tests for fire talent, for example, will only indicate whether someone has fire ta, lent and nothing else. The most common innate aptitudes were cultivation, speed, strength, and defense. Others fell under the 5 elements, fire, water, wood, metal, earth, and a few rare types were hard to quantify. Ye Tian skimmed the assessments and, in a heartbeat, picked out a prodigy who had been overlooked. The best time to nurture geniuses is right after they begin cultivating, he decided. Around 15 years old, Gather a cohort of 15-year-olds and make them the first training team. Ye Tian made his decision. Chapter 170, Geniuses didn't usually come out of newly formed factions. Real prodigies almost always originated in long-standing powers or influential families. The children of the strong tended not to be weak. Expecting to recruit such people was unrealistic. Clan heirs and scions of great houses were unwilling to join, and even if they could be persuaded, their loyalty was never guaranteed. Ye Tian had to accept the obvious. His recruits would have to come from the civilian population. The Zhonghai base contained many civilian districts, and among them, the Jinghu district was one of the more developed. But developed was relative. The neighborhoods there weren't home to powerful ancestral lines. Generations of ordinary families lived there. In a few cases, a father might once have been a strong warrior, but he had fallen, died, or otherwise lost his status and could not pass on the family's spiritual legacy. Those families were forced to blend into the civilian districts. In short, the civilian quarters were far from prosperous. There were no gleaming high-rises, only aging buildings. Life for the common people was hard. Powerful fighters were a rare sight in places like Jinghu. If Ye Tian hoped to find talent here, he would have to sift through the ordinary, searching for the exceptional buried among the many who, on the surface, appeared mediocre. Many of the geniuses born in the civilian districts never return once they rise. They migrate into the bustling sectors of the Zhonghai superbase. Over time, the central hub has become richer and more vibrant, while the civilian zones have grown weaker by comparison. That said, the civilian districts still contain huge numbers of people, and among them there will always be a few gifted individuals. The catch is this: unless a person's cultivation aptitude is high enough, it's very difficult for them to rise. For example, an ordinary man with poor cultivation potential might nevertheless possess an exceptional special talent. If he never manages to cultivate to the level of a martial artist and gives up cultivation to live as a commoner, that talent is effectively buried, and unless it's discovered, it will stay hidden for the rest of his life. This day, Ye Tian arrived in Lunan, one of Zhonghai Base's many civilian districts, home to roughly 200,000 people. The moment he stepped in, his replication ability swept outward in a 2-kilometer radius. He scanned the populace one by one, mapping their talent profiles and forming a dense virtual overlay of the district's human resources. Sure enough, the civilians' talents aren't very impressive. Ye Tian frowned. Most of the people here only possessed inferior or primary talents. Only a few had none at all. That was better than what he'd seen at Linhai Base or the Demon Sea Grand Base, but it was far too ordinary for Zhonghai Super Base. Ye Tian's standards for new recruits were strict. If someone had the Morningstar cultivation talent, he would train them even without a special talent. If someone had a strong special talent, he would accept them even if their cultivation aptitude was a little weaker. But if a person lacked both a powerful special talent and the Morningstar cultivation talent, he wouldn't bother. That principle, shared by him and Ning Kuei, guided their selection of subordinates. Recruiting a bunch of mediocre geniuses who only ever become run-of-the-mill masters or kings wouldn't help at all. No promising talent here. Ye Tian shook his head, left the area, and moved on to continue his search toward the Lunan civilian district. The narrow street was almost empty as dusk settled, and a 16-year-old boy trudged home with a tired face. He clutched a small bag of medicine to his chest, fingers white around the straps as if afraid to let go. That package was everything. His sister was sick, and this medicine might be the only thing that could save her. He had worked for a month to afford it. Today his boss had finally paid his wages, and with that pay, he'd bought the costly ingredients. To him, they were extravagantly expensive. To the powerful warriors who passed by, the remedy would have seemed ordinary. Warrior, one day I'll be a powerful warrior too, he promised himself, the words hard and steady. But the promise felt distant. He had to work every day to keep food on the table and care for his sister. There was barely any time to cultivate. He was only a second-class cultivation talent and was training with the basic forging body method. He couldn't risk multiple practice sessions a day. If he overdid it, he'd be too exhausted to work the next morning, and they would starve. So he pushed his dream into the margins of his life, holding it close like the precious medicine in his hands. He'd begun cultivating at 15, but even in the Shanghai superbase, where the world's vitality ran thick, his progress was painfully slow. He'd only just broken into the level of martial artist. Compared with most people in the base, even in the Lunan civilian area, he was a weak nobody at the very bottom. Relief washed over the teenager as he neared his front door. He was almost home. Then a voice called out behind him. "Lindsay, what have you got there?" The name made his face go white. He bolted for the house, thinking if he could just slam the door and lock it, he'd be safe. The rules in Shanghai were strict. Powerful fighters rarely dared brazenly break into someone's home. Still, the thing he was carrying wasn't ordinary. It was medicine his sick sister needed. If that was taken, there'd be no time to chase justice. Without proof, he couldn't convict anyone, and even if he tried to sue, the whole process would drag on for months. His sister couldn't wait that long. A soft whoosh, and a figure materialized in front of him. It was Zhang Long, the boy who had been tormenting him for months. Zhang Long was a year older than Lindsay. He'd always been talented, average as cultivation gifts went, but good enough, and he'd already risen to the rank of a powerful martial artist. That strength, however, only counted in the civilian ranks. It didn't make him a true prodigy of the sect. What it did make him was arrogant. Zhang Long liked to pick on weaker fighters, and Lindsay was one of his favorite targets. He even had a habit of stealing from him. "Hand it over," Zhang Long barked. He moved so fast that Lindsay didn't have time to react. Zhang snatched the small medicine bag right out of Lin's hands and flicked it open with a sneer. "What's this?" "It's my sister's medicine. Her cure. It's useless to you. Give it back," Lindsay cried. Zhang Long peered inside. There were plenty of herbs, nothing rare, but not worthless either. A few of the bunch would fetch a good price. He laughed aloud. "Perfect. I can sell this for 2,000 yuan. You really spent a month's wages on this? Ha, now it belongs to me." "No, give it back." Lindsay lunged forward, desperate to retrieve the bag. But a smaller, weaker fighter has no chance against someone of Zhang Long's standing. Zhang Long's face went cold. "You trying to get yourself killed?" he said. He hadn't been willing to kill Lindsay, only to hurt him a little. A few lost medical expenses were nothing. He was about to move when his body suddenly wouldn't obey him. "A mere martial artist dares to be so arrogant at the late stage?" someone said. A young man stepped forward. The moment he appeared, the noise in the area died down as if someone had turned a dial. For a beat, the world felt frozen. Then sound and movement returned, but Zhang Long remained slumped on the ground, drenched in sweat and gasping. Terror had frozen him, a presence like a great horror. Zhang Long had never seen anything like it. The young man's aura seemed to chill the air itself. Even the powerful sect elders milling around looked pale in comparison. Big shots from the wealthy district, Zhang Long realized aloud. He dropped to his knees, shaking. The newcomer was, of course, Ye Tian. Ye Tian ignored Zhang Long entirely and walked straight to Lindsay. "Go get the medicine," Ye Tian ordered. Lindsay nodded, peded forward, and took the medicine pouch from Zhang Long's hand. Zhang Long didn't dare stop him. It was a direct command from someone far above him. "Not leaving yet?" Ye Tian said coldly. Zhang Long heard him and bolted. Lindsay dropped to his knees. "Thank you, Lord." "Stand up." Ye Tian's voice was flat. Lindsay scrambled to his feet. "My lord, may I go home? My sister is ill and needs something to drink." "I'll go with you," Ye Tian answered casually. Lindsay flushed with embarrassment. "My house is a mess. Would you really be welcome there?" "Of course." Ye Tian's reply was deliberate. Relief flooded Lindsay's face. He hurried forward, stammering, "If you're willing to come, please, come with me." Chapter 171. Lindsay's home was painfully ordinary, a tiny, dilapidated bungalow with no yard to speak of. The whole place looked like it had been patched together for years. When Ye Tian stepped inside, he saw a young girl lying on a thin straw mattress. Her face was ashen and her breathing shallow. That girl was Lindsay's sister, Lin Yi. At the sight of them, she managed a weak smile. "Brother, you're back. Is this your friend?" "Yi, this is a man from the rich district," Lindsay blurted, hurried and embarrassed. Hearing Ye Tian's origin, Lin Yi's eyes widened and she tried to push herself up, clearly wanting to bow in respect so she wouldn't offend him. Don't get up, Ye Tian said, waving her off with a gentle hand. Lindsay had already reached for a pot and a bundle of herbs, ready to brew a tonic for his sister, but Ye Tian stopped him with a firm shake of his head. Don't bother decocting medicine. Your remedies work well for ordinary illnesses, and they'll restore strength quickly, but Yi is far too weak for a strong tonic. Those kinds of medicines are supplements, too potent for someone in her current state. They could do more harm than good. Sir, what should I do? Lindsay's voice trembled. He looked from the herbs to his sister, panic flaring in his eyes. Lindsay Shea didn't know anything about medicine. He'd only heard rumors that this remedy could cure almost any illness, so he'd bought some for his sister. He hadn't considered how fragile she was, though. Most sick people can tolerate treatment because their bodies are still relatively strong, but Lin Yi had been ill for years and was painfully malnourished, far weaker than ordinary children. Her body simply couldn't handle a powerful tonic. This illness is nothing, Ye Tian said. He snapped his fingers, and a single drop of the milky liquid slipped into Lin Yi's mouth. It slid down her throat and into her body. Within moments, her color returned, and her breathing steadied. Brother, I feel better, Lin Yi cried, sitting up on the bed, excitement in her voice. Thank you, my lord. How much was that medicine? I'll work to pay you back, Lin Zexi stammered, grateful and anxious. Forget it, Ye Tian said casually. It isn't worth much. In truth, that single drop from such a miraculous remedy would cost a small fortune, hundreds of thousands by ordinary standards, an amount unimaginable to most people. If Lindsay seriously wanted to repay him, becoming a warrior was the only way, and even then, it might take a lifetime. Lindsay, Ye Tian said abruptly, do you want to become a warrior, stronger than that teenager Zhang Long you just saw? Me? I could become a powerful warrior? Lindsay stared at him, stunned. He knew his own aptitude, poor, far below average. It was already difficult for him to break into the martial path. Even if he somehow managed to become a warrior, there seemed no hope of advancing beyond the basics. He had never even heard of any treasure that could improve one's cultivation talent, so he didn't think such a thing was possible. No, you're wrong. You have real talent. Ye Tian's voice was calm and certain. If you're willing, I can train you. I can make you into a true strongman, and your sister can train under me as well. He spoke with absolute seriousness. There was no pity in his expression. Ye Tian didn't hand out favors to every poor person who crossed his path. He was helping Lindsay and Lin Yi for one reason only. He could see their potential. Others might miss it, but Ye Tian could recognize talent when he saw it. Using his copying talent, Ye Tian was able to clearly read the siblings' aptitude reports. Name Lindsay, cultivation talent, inferior, speed talent top unawakened, sword talent top, strength talent medium unawakened. Lin Yi, cultivation talent morning star, speed talent top, array talent morning star, sword talent high. Ye Tian was stunned. He hadn't expected the two recruits who fit his criteria so well to be brother and sister. Lindsay's combat potent, IL was obvious. Top-tier sword talent combined with top speed and respectable strength, even if some of that potential remained unawakened. If his cultivation talent could be raised from its current low level, those qualities would stack, and he could easily become a king-tier powerhouse. Lin Yi wasn't as naturally combative as her brother, but her prospects were no less impressive. Her cultivation aptitude was Morning Star level, on par with the true prodigies at the Zhonghai Superbase, and that alone could carry her to saint-level power. Add a high-level sword aptitude and top speed, even if unawakened, and her battlefield effectiveness would be formidable. More important than anything else was that she possessed Morning Star formation talent. Morning Star formation talent. What did that mean? Ye Tian had never encountered one before. Even in the Zhonghai Superbase, an array mage of the Morning Star level might exist, but they were unbelievably rare. If one were ever discovered, the four great powers would move heaven and earth to protect them. Talents like that were priceless. Ye Tian could hardly believe his luck. He had stumbled onto a true prodigy. Beside him, Lindsay sat frozen with shock. The influential man from the affluent district had actually offered to recruit her, and even to personally cultivate her. Was it for real or some kind of scam? No, that couldn't be. Whatever the liquid medicine Ye Tian had just used to heal the girl's sister was worth, it had cured her instantly. A remedy like that couldn't possibly be cheap. There was no way anyone would sell a sister for a single drop of medicine. Besides, from what he'd seen of Ye Tian's power, Lindsay estimated he was more than just a local big shot, maybe on par with or even above a sect master. A man like that would not be trying to swindle two ordinary people. The offer had to be genuine. "My lord, I will join your forces." Lindsay recognized the offer for what it was, a rare chance to become a true martial artist. If not for Ye Tian, he never would have chosen this path. Without Ye Tian around, Zhang Long would only keep picking on him. He needed protection and a future, and this was the moment to seize it. "You must understand," Ye Tian said in a low, commanding voice. "Once you join my ranks, you must never betray me." "I will never betray you, my lord. I swear it," Lindsay answered, solemn and steady. Lin Yi echoed the oath beside him, swearing the same vow. With that, the two of them became the first members of Ye Tian's small force. After they had pledged themselves, Ye Tian pressed them for more of their story. They told him they had never known their father, only that their mother had been a common woman and their father had once been a powerful warrior, though they didn't know how far his strength had reached. The family had lived rather comfortably in the civilian quarter, in a large courtyard, until the day their father went out into the wilds and never returned. A few years later, their mother died as well, leaving the siblings to fend for themselves. Their parents had left them a sizable inheritance, but because the children were still small, a family took them in and seized the money. A few years later, that family packed up and vanished into the wealthy district, never to be seen again. In the end, the Civil Affairs Office officially placed the two siblings in this little house, and they had been living there ever since. That was the whole story. Ye Tian guessed their father must have been a king, a very powerful one, which explained why the two children were so gifted. "Lord Ye Tian, what will our sect be called?" Lin Yi asked, curiosity bright in her eyes. For a moment, Ye Tian realized he hadn't given the group a name. He thought a second, then decided, "We'll call it the Heavenly Pavilion." Lin Yi blinked, then her expression shifted as a new question occurred to her. "Lord Ye Tian, this sect, it isn't something you just made up just now, is it?" At the side, Lindsay's alarmed face went pale. He hurriedly grabbed his sister's sleeve. "Yi, don't be rude to Lord Ye Tian," he hissed, worried that a blunt question might offend him. Ye Tian gave no sign of taking offense, but the two siblings fell quiet, embarrassed and careful now, aware that there were things they ought not to ask too directly. "Nothing serious. The kid was just curious," Ye Tian said, patting Yi's head. "But Yi is right. Tianjia has only just been formed, yet I believe it will inevitably become one of the top forces at the Zhonghai superbase." Seeing that Ye Tian wasn't angry, Lindsay relaxed. Chapter 172. Ye Tian had brought Lindsay and Lin Yi into the Heavenly Pavilion's new force, and he wasn't about to leave them in the civilian district. They had almost nothing to pack, just a change of clothes apiece, and followed him without protest. Lindsay didn't mention his old job or his paltry 2,000 yuan a month. After aligning himself with someone like Ye Tian, he had little interest in worrying over that small wage. In the Mirror Lake district, Ye Tian first put Lindsay and Lin Yi up in his villa temporarily, then bought a mansion to serve as the headquarters for his new force. He soon moved them into the mansion's living quarters. Next, he called in his sister, Ye Yu, to begin formally guiding Lindsay's cultivation. Ye Yu was a master, after all, and instructing a martial disciple was well within her abilities. 13-year-old Lin Yi required a different approach. She was still growing, so she needed supplements and medicinal elixirs to promote physical development. Ye Tian's plan was to get her physically ready so that within half a year she would meet the minimum requirements to advance into proper cultivation. There was, however, one more pressing matter. Lindsay's cultivation talent was too low, only an inferior grade. If nothing changed, he had no idea when he might ever reach the level of a martial artist. They had to raise his talent level, but it wouldn't be given away for free. That same day, Ye Tian and Ye Yu set up a contribution point and exchange system, stocking the Heavenly Pavilion's point shop with a variety of treasures, including items that could boost a member's talent. From then on, any pavilion member could trade points for these treasures. Points would be earned by completing tasks, turning in rare items, and similar contributions. Ye would be in charge of the new point system and the recruitment of talented individuals. Once the system was in place, Ye Tian called Lindsay forward. "Lindsay, do you know how cultivation talent levels are divided?" he asked. "Inferior, lower, primary, intermediate, high, and top," Lindsay answered. Ye Tian nodded. "Actually, what counts as top talent outside is only ordinary here in the Zhonghai Superbase. Above that is the super extraordinary tier. People with that sort of aptitude can easily break through to the King realm, which is one level beyond the Grandmaster realm. With your natural gift, don't expect to reach the King realm. You'd have a hard time becoming a true martial artist without help. You understand that, right?" "I know," Lindsay said, a little dispirited. "There are many treasures in the world that can boost a person's aptitude," Ye Tian continued. "With the right relics, your secondary talent could be elevated. Right now, the Heavenly Pavilion has an item called the Cao Fan Dan. It can raise someone's cultivation talent to the extraordinary level. It costs 1,000,000 points. You only get 100 points when you first join the Heavenly Pavilion," the administrator explained. "With that starter allotment, you normally can't redeem a Cao Fan Dan at all. However, I can authorize an advance exchange. I'll let you take a transcendence pill now and record it as a 1,000,000 point debt. You must repay it within 3 years. If you fail to finish repayment on time, the debt will accrue an extra 100,000 points in interest for every year overdue. That's one option. The other is to slowly save your points and purchase treasures that boost your innate cultivation talent, which is also feasible over time." "I'll take the transcendence pill now," Lindsay said without hesitation. He didn't need to think twice. An extraordinary level talent, a step above the highest normal talent classification, would change everything for him. Zhang Longkai, the one who had been picking on him, only had a middling talent. If Lindsay upgraded to a super extraordinary talent, he could rapidly climb the ranks. Elite fighter, master, even grandmaster in time. The price, repaying 1,000,000 points within 3 years, with heavy interest if late, scared him less than the alternative. His real fear had never been debt. It was being unable to cultivate. With that in mind, he was certain he could earn the points to pay the debt off. Cultivation came first. Everything else could be dealt with later. Sign the contract, and the Transcendent Dan is yours. Ye Tian produced a pact and pushed it forward. Lindsay didn't hesitate. He signed, sealed the agreement, and Ye Tian handed over the Cao Fan Dan. No time was wasted. Lindsay swallowed the pill, and the alchemical power surged through him. In minutes, he had broken through. His aptitude leapt to an extraordinary grade cultivation talent. Ye Tian watched without surprise. Pills like the Cao Fan Dan were rare in his hands. He could only spare one for now. Still, he judged Lindsay's other qualities as well worth the investment. Giving up the Cao Fan Dan was already pushing his limits. Even among the great powers, it was difficult to elevate a person's innate talent all the way to the Morning Star level. The only reason his sister had reached Morning Star before was because he had once stumbled upon a singular talent Dan, an accident of fate. There had been only one, so that chance could not be replicated. And even if more such treasures existed, Ye Tian reminded himself he couldn't keep handing them out. He was cultivating subordinates, not distributing miracle pills by whim. If Lindsay wanted to further raise his talent in the future, he would have to seek out his own opportunities. Over the next few days, Ye Tian combed through several residential districts of the Zhonghai Superbase, tracking down nearly every civilian he could find. In total, he located 100 people. 18 of them were young adults in their 20s. They showed unusual aptitudes, special talents of one kind or another, but their cultivation levels were poor, so for now, they were essentially ordinary civilians. The remainder were girls, most of them around 15 years old or younger. Even the weakest among that group had high cultivation potential, and the primary reason Ye Tian had plucked them out of the populace was that they possessed exceptional special talents. Among the whole lot, there were only 3 Morning Star cultivation talents. One of them was Lin Yi. Having 3 morning stars in a single civilian district was an extraordinarily unlikely stroke of luck, but Ye Tian had no complaints. For the initial formation of the force, securing 3 morning stars plus a clutch of top-tier, special-talented prodigies was more than satisfactory. Once this first wave of Heavenly Pavilion members trained up and the pavilion's reputation began to spread, recruiting more geniuses would no longer be difficult. Ye Tian had spent a fortune building 20 top-level cultivation chambers to train his group of prodigies. The cost in yuan qi stones was astronomical, and he had no idea how long it would take to keep them supplied. Of course, using a top chamber wasn't free. Cultivators had to spend points to enter, so Ye Tian set up a system of tasks to earn those points and delegated the task management to Ye Yu. For now, the assignments were mostly intelligence gathering and reconnaissance. The Heavenly Pavilion was growing steadily, and Ye Tian himself kept pushing his cultivation, desperate to open more deep mental domains as soon as possible. 5 days later, a report arrived at the pavilion. The Wind Blood faction intended to break into the God of War Tower and had already reached its gates. A Heavenly Pavilion scout had picked up the movement, and the news reached Ye Tian first. One of the pavilion's standing missions was to monitor the geniuses at the Zhonghai Superbase, so this was exactly the sort of lead they prioritized. Because the God of War Tower was such a high-value, high-point target, Tianjia disciples had been lying in ambush around it. No one wanted to miss a chance to score big. Ye Tian had just come out of retreat and hurried straight to the God of War Tower. He had been anxious about the Upanishads-level power talent in Wind and Blood for some time. Now, finally, he could copy that opponent's Upanishads-level ability and fully convert his own power talent to the same level. His arrival at the tower immediately caused a stir. Ye Tian's face had long been publicized on the holy list. Many recognized him on sight. "It's Ye Tian Dasheng! Ye Tian Dasheng! I saw Ye Tian Dasheng!" A king-rank powerhouse clasped his fist in salute from a distance. The disciples of the Heavenly Pavilion looked at their master with worshipful eyes. They had just learned the truth. The cabinet lord was none other than Ye Tian, the great sage listed on the holy list, a great saint-level powerhouse. They had been ordinary people until now, and suddenly they found themselves aligned with a great saint. How fortunate they felt. Still, they remembered Ye Tian's orders: investigate quietly and never expose their identities. Chapter 173. Ye Tian didn't loiter outside the Battle Trace Tower. That would have looked suspicious. He walked straight into the God of War Tower instead. The place was huge, and he drifted through the wide, echoing halls as people gathered around the results. The Blood Wind Killing Challenge didn't last long. After about 2 hours, it was over. The announcement came up: Wind Blood of the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall, 37th on the holy list, 11th floor of the God of War Tower, Great Saint level. As soon as the ranking appeared, a buzz ran through the crowd. Wind Blood's placement isn't as good as Ye Tian's. I could have sworn Wind Blood and Ye Tian were both on the verge of breaking into the holy level. How could there be such a gap? Someone said. They remembered that earlier, on the king's list, Wind Blood had been first while Ye Tian had been 7th. Don't put too much stock in the king's list, another voice replied. First or 7th on that list still means 7-star king level. The differences aren't dramatic. What matters is how they performed in the duel. Ye Tian just set a new record for the strongest attack. He may be a little slower, but in raw striking power he's even more terrifying than Wind Blood. The crowd murmured in agreement, speculation and surprise mingling, as everyone tried to reassess the two fighters' true strengths. People said that once you reached the holy level, you had to open your deep mind domain. Maybe Ye Tian had found some treasure that let him start opening his. Whatever the reason, his progress shot ahead of Wind Blood's, and he'd already reached the 12th floor of the Tower of the God of War. Every 1% you unlock in the deep mind domain gives a huge boost to your power, others agreed. Both Ye Tian and Wind Blood were only just beginning their climb through the holy level. In time, they would both rank among the top on the holy grade list, so it wasn't worth arguing over who was temporarily faster or slower. Inside the Tower of the God of War, Wind Blood stepped out of the virtual challenge chamber with with a sour expression. During his retreat under the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall, he had spent a fortune on treasures to help pry open his deep mind domain and had managed to unlock it to 3%. When he heard Ye Tian had already broken into the 12th floor, he couldn't help but feel doubtful. And after finishing his retreat, he came straight to the tower to test himself. The result was humiliatingly clear. He was still far behind. He'd broken through the 11th layer, but at the 12th, he was cut down by the black-clad warrior on that floor in just 3 moves. He hadn't been able to put up any real resistance. The fact that Ye Tian had been able to kill that same black-clad warrior made it clear Ye Tian could have done the same to him without the slightest trouble. Being so easily outclassed and crushed by Ye Tian, a former 7-star king-level prodigy, left him feeling shaken. Wind, Killing Blood guessed at first that Ye Tian must have found some priceless treasure in the temple's spatial chamber, or somehow upgraded a quasi-mystic power talent to true mystic level and gained other mind-opening relics that explained his sudden strength. But he was surprised to learn that Ye Tian's power talent was still only at the quasi-mystic level. The real difference was Ye Tian's sword talent. He'd cultivated 2 gold-tier sword techniques and possessed a great number of other talents. Compared to Ye Tian, Wind Killing Blood felt like an ordinary person standing next to a genius. If Ye Tian chose to, he could probably break through the 13th or even the 14th layer with ease. Ye Tian had seen the Wind Killing Blood, but he hadn't expected it to stay. Instead of leaving, it slipped into the inner space of the God of War monument to investigate the axe intent. Forced into action, Ye Tian followed and entered the monument's space as well. He sat on the cold stone slab and tried to decide what to cultivate next. A raise? He could keep refining his enlightenment, but he had no intention of developing formation techniques right away. He hadn't even copied Lin Yi's Morning Star formation talent. In the future, he planned to train Lin Yi to be a formation mage and hand over responsibility for formation methods to her. Do I need to pursue the sword? He wondered. His sword intent realm was already 10% complete, but he had no idea whether there was a level beyond sword intent. Ye Tian thought about it and felt certain his own sword aptitude had already reached the Morning Star level. He might even possess the qualities of the Huiyue and Shi Ri tiers, yet even the very highest sword talents could only manifest about 10% of what the manuals called sword intent, and reaching even that fraction would take a tremendous amount of time. The official pronouncement from Zhonghai Superbase that there was no realm beyond sword intent began to sound like nonsense. If the base had never defined a higher realm, perhaps it was simply because none of their fighters had a Morning Star level aptitude. What use, then, was the Morning Star sword talent if it only made a warrior a walking ornament? If there truly is no description of a higher realm, then I'll find it myself, Ye Tian decided. He pushed the thought into action. Flaring his time talent to 3 times its normal intensity, he used the God of War tablet as a focus and set himself to probing whatever lay beyond the known limits of the sword. A day passed. 5 days. 10. Ye Tian lost track of everything else. Even Wind and Blood faded from his mind, as he poured every waking moment into teasing out the nature of the realm beyond sword intent. Only the sword mattered. The potent aptitude of the Morning Star sword technique did its work. A new insight bloomed, and Ye Tian's 10% perfection sword intent seemed to unfurl another edge of power, as if a previously closed door had quietly swung open. 3 days later, he opened his eyes. Joy shone deep in them. I've broken through, he whispered. There really is a realm above the 10% sword intent, the Sword Dao realm. The Sword Dao realm contains the force of sword law itself. It is the entry level into the way of the sword, a whole new tier beyond ordinary advancement, almost like stepping into a new rank of talent. But it's not easy to attain. At minimum, it requires the Morning Star sword technique aptitude, and among everyone at the Zhonghai Superbase, no one else could reach this realm except Ye Tian. Upanishad's level aptitude isn't a single, uniform thing. Many people can use treasures to raise their natural talent into a pseudo-Upanishads tier, and then, with artifacts like the God of War tablet, gradually push into the higher realms. Talents such as Morningstar Cultivation and the Huiyue level aptitude play a large part in that process. With the right combination of treasures, there's a real hope of nudging one's aptitude up to roughly 70% of the pseudo-Upanishad's threshold. Later, when a king-level cultivator ascends to the holy level, that final boost can convert them into true Upanishad's talent. There had been signs that Upanishad's talent could emerge, but no sign of anyone naturally giving birth to the sword Tao, except Ye Tian. In the entire Zhonghai superbase, he was the only warrior who had glimpsed the sword Tao. Even so, his realization was only preliminary. He had just sensed the direction of the sword Tao, a first tentative step across the threshold. It would still take a few days before he could truly enter the realm of the Inichi sword Tao, and when Samwu manifested, it did little to increase his power. Ye Tian still lacked any sword technique above the gold rank, so the new insight hadn't yet translated into a significant rise in strength. Once he mastered a sword technique above the gold rank, Ye Tian's power would leap again. After another 4 days of enlightenment, he fully entered the realm of the sword Tao. He noticed then that the blood sage was still meditating on his axe technique, clear evidence that the sage had just absorbed a large influx of power and needed to withdraw for a while to consolidate it. But he couldn't slack off for long. Having only just broken through the holy tier, every additional 1% of progress in the profound domain sent strength surging. The blood sage knew that and kept working the axe without pause. Sure enough, on the 18th day, the blood sage finally emerged, and Ye Tian followed. As the two of them stepped out of the tower of the god of war, Feng Qiqi regarded Ye Tian with suspicion, wondering if he had left on purpose to accompany the sage. Ye Tian, great sage! Blood sage! Someone shouted from outside the tower. Ye Tian gave wind-killing blood no attention at all, acting as if he'd only appeared by accident and was already moving on. Wind-killing blood didn't bother to speak to him. He merely turned and walked toward the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall. What Feng Shui didn't know was that Ye Tian had already copied his Upanishad's grade power talent and had taken his 40% pseudo-Upanishad's grade speed talent as well. Chapter 174. Back home at last, Ye Tian couldn't wait to fuse the Upanishad's grade power talent. His talent had already reached a pseudo-Upanishad state at 90%. Now that he had absorbed the Upanishads of wind and blood, becoming a true Upanishad's power talent was inevitable. He focused, and the fusion began. Everything around him trembled. Power and body, mysteries and muscle, flowed together with no resistance, slotting into place as if they'd always belonged. The process felt seamless. There was no barrier to break through. Slowly, the power became a part of him. 10 minutes later, it was over. Sweat soaked his clothes as he checked his status. Sure enough, the indicator confirmed it. Power talent Upanishads. Just like with the defensive talent, Ye Tian mused, once it reaches the Upanishads level, there aren't partial stages like 10% or 20%. The change is total. The Upanishads upgrade seems to multiply your ability 100-fold, and you can't push it any further, unless you're promoted to some higher talent. But was there anything beyond Upanishads? He didn't know. Probably none of the other Saint-grade Emperor levels stationed at the Zhonghai superbase knew either. Ye Tian then fused the 50% pseudo-mystic level wind and blood speed talent with his existing speed talent. The result was that his original 20% pseudo-mystic speed talent jumped to 60%, and his speed surged several times over. After he exhausted both of his replication attempts, Ye Tian went into seclusion to consolidate and raise his cultivation. He spent the entire time in the upper cultivation chamber with triple time acceleration running, desperate to break open his deep brain domain. He even used the only vial of the elixir that aids in opening the domain. 3 months passed in an instant. When the retreat ended, his deep brain domain had opened to 12%. During that period, he had also copied several speed talents onto the golden armor corpse golems, pushing their speed talents up to 90% of the pseudo-mystic level. These golems had been the last batch he'd slain in the temple space and stored away in his portable space. Their remains were now what he used as templates for replicating the pseudo-mystic speed talent. Unfortunately, the speed aptitude they carried was only at the pseudo-Upanishads level. and there was no simple way to elevate Ye Tian's pseudo-Upanishad speed talent into a true Upanishads level 1 by himself. He did, however, suspect that if he could find another pseudo-Upanishads level speed talent to pair with his own, the two might be combined and genuinely promoted to the Upanishads tier. At Sky Pavilion, Ye Tian and Ye Yu sat on the top floor. Xiao Yu had already broken into the king level. Thanks to her Morning Star innate talent, a first-class Yuanli cultivation secret technique, the finest cultivation chamber, and several meridian refining treasures, she had in a short time surged to the very peak of the Grandmaster realm and then leapt into the king rank in a single breakthrough. Ye Tian had expected this outcome long ago. Xiao Yu, how is the Tianjie progressing? Ye Tian asked. Brother, the heavenly pavilion is progressing very well. Except for Yi Yi and a few other youngsters who haven't begun cultivating yet, everyone else has become martial artists. Zhao Hua and Sun Yu have even reached the peak of elite martial artist in only 3 months. They'll be stepping into the great martial artist rank soon. Ye Yu's voice was steady as he reported the latest developments. Zhao Hua and Sun Yu were the other two of the 3 Morning Star talents. They had only just turned 15 when Ye Tian found them, and as soon as they arrived at the Heavenly Pavilion, they began training in earnest. With top-tier cultivation secrets, the best training chambers, and the natural advantage of Morning Star talent, their progress had been astonishing. Ye Tian allowed himself a small smile. The investment had paid off. The pavilion's resources, methods, and talent pool had combined into a terrifying amplification effect. It wouldn't be long, he thought, before sect masters and even king-level figures emerged from among them. Those talents would be invaluable. Good return on the investment, he said softly. After giving Ye Yu a few brief instructions, Ye Tian left the Tian headquarters. A message flashed in from the Scattered Cultivation Alliance headquarters. Holy meeting! Ye Tian frowned. The Alliance rarely called meetings. Since he himself had risen to saint rank, it hadn't summoned one at all. The organization was too loose for that. If they were convening a meeting now, something serious must have happened. He went straight to the Alliance headquarters and took a seat in the main high-level conference chamber. A number of saints were already there, including the crazy sword great sage with whom he had struck a bargain. In all, some 30 saint-ranked cultivators had gathered, but most of their auras were weak, ordinary saints or minor saints. Only a handful were true great saints. After all, across the entire Zhonghai superbase, there were only a few dozen great saints. The Scattered Cultivation Alliance could not possibly field many more than that. Ye Tian Dasheng! Ye Tian Dasheng! Ye Tian Dasheng! The hall echoed with the shouts as saint-level cultivators greeted Ye Tian Dasheng. He returned the calls with a casual nod. Moments later, the Crazy Knife Grand Sage stepped forward. Ye Tian Dasheng, do you know what this meeting is about? He asked. Before Ye Tian could answer, the Wild Sword Grand Sage spoke with a grave tone. Do you not know? Ye Tian shook his head. The Wild Sword Grand Sage's expression hardened. Ye Tian Dasheng, there's a strong possibility something has happened at the 5-star space rift. By custom, any saint level of our rank must respond. You and I are obliged to go inspect it. What's wrong at the 5-star rift? Ye Tian asked, frowning. The Wild Sword Grand Sage's voice grew heavy. The 5-star rift is one of the most critical passages. If it falls, the hordes of ferocious beasts will gain an opening to strike the surface. Emperor-level beasts could spill onto the earth. Whole bases would be imperiled. If even one Emperor-level monster runs rampant, it would be a catastrophe for humanity. Ye Tian's brow tightened as the weight of their words sank in. Suddenly, Ye Tian's replication talent swept over several Huiyue-level cultivators and detected a terrifying Emperor-level aura emanating from a handful of them. What disappointed him was that none of them possessed true Upanishad-level talent, though one did have a pseudo-Upanishad-level speed talent. He hadn't copied that pseudo-Upanishad speed yet, so in principle it was still available to him. In practice, however, his replication ability had a 10-day cooldown, and it hadn't reset yet. On top of that, his copying required locking eyes with the target, which he couldn't do right now. The conference room door opened, and 4 emperors entered. One walked at the front, the other 3 followed behind in formation. The leader was the Kuei-Rong Emperor, one of the 36 emperors, ranked 9th and effectively the number 2 of the scattered Cultivation Alliance. The Wild Sword Great Saint's transmission voice fed Ye Tian the identification. With that brief introduction, Ye Tian had a basic understanding of who they were. The sudden arrival of 4 emperors put many of the saints on edge. Emperor Kuei-Rong said, "The Scattered Cultivation Alliance is a loose organization. We don't force anyone to attend these meetings, but many come to show respect to the alliance. Some of you may have already heard the rumors. They're true. There was an accident beyond the 5-star space rift, and one of the 36 emperors has fallen." What? Every saint's expression changed at once. When did one of the 36 emperors fall? How had no news reached them? Emperor Kuei, which emperor fell? The Wild Sword Grand Sage asked, his voice grave. He had not heard of this, and the revelation left him stunned. It was not an ordinary emperor, but one of the 36. Chapter 175. It's the Tyrannosaurus Emperor who has fallen, Emperor Kuei said, voice heavy with sorrow. As one of the 36 emperors, the death of the Tyrannosaurus Emperor hit him hard, and it meant the rest of them might be in danger as well. He was the 25th among the 36 emperors. Extremely powerful, he had Upanishads-level defensive talent and Upanishads-level strength talent. Many saints stood stunned. Ye Tian's expression darkened. He knew something of the Tyrannosaurus Emperor's abilities. The Tyrannosaurus Emperor was a witch, a member of the Witch Temple. He possessed both Upanishads-level strength and Upanishads-level defensive talent, but he lacked any weapon class or martial, boxing talent, so he couldn't combine talents to further amplify his combat power. Even so, his strength was terrifying. Emperors who possess Upanishads-level defensive talent are exceedingly difficult to kill. That level of defense multiplies their protection 100-fold, rendering them nearly impervious to ordinary attacks. Even without additional amplification, the Tyrannosaurus Emperor's defenses were formidable, which made his fall all the more shocking. It had been said that the Tyrannosaurus Emperor once let a group of lesser emperors besiege him without so much as resisting. Those inferior emperors wore themselves out and died of exhaustion while the Tyrannosaurus Emperor walked away unscathed. Everyone assumed he was untouchable, and yet now the Tyrannosaurus Emperor, the one who possessed 2 Upanishads of talent, had fallen. The news was staggering. Emperor Kuei, how did the Tyrannosaurus Emperor die? The Wild Knife Grand Sage demanded. Kuei-Rong replied, still shaken. He was surrounded and killed by 3 emperor-level fierce beasts of equal rank. On paper, he could have handled them alone, but there was a 4th, terrifying emperor-level beast hiding in the dark. It suddenly ignored his defensive talent and, using a dreadful soul-type ability, annihilated the Tyrannosaurus Emperor's soul in a few blows. Kuei-Rong's eyes were full of fear as he finished. A soul attack talent. The saints' faces drained of color. Soul talent is a terrifying ability. It ignores raw attack power and punches straight through defenses. Only exceptionally high cultivation or another soul talent can resist it. Otherwise, even a relatively weak emperor could, with a single soul strike, kill one of the 36 emperors. Emperor Kuei. If the opponent really has a soul talent, then unless the 36th emperor has a way to counter it, he won't be able to stop that soul attack, someone at holy level said, voice trembling with horror. Not exactly, Emperor Kuei said. That ferocious beast has a soul-type talent. On paper, it should only be an ordinary emperor-level beast, but its soul power, amplified by that soul talent, was stronger than the Tyrannosaur Emperor's. That's why the Tyrannosaur Emperor's soul was annihilated. How many soul attacks it used, we don't know. We only received the Tyrannosaur Emperor's summons moments before he died. Be careful, this is an emperor-level creature. He went on, we figure that a cultivator with sufficiently high level and strong soul power can block a soul talent assault. Besides, the Moon Emperor, one of the 30 emperors, has a relic that can resist soul attacks. He's already gone to the spatial rift to hunt this beast, and once he finds it, he'll kill it at all costs. The Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor of the Witch God Temple possessed the Blood-Eye ability, a pupil-based gaze attack that functioned like a soul assault. It wasn't as powerful as the soul attack of that emperor-level ferocious beast, but it could still wound the soul and should be able to block the beast's soul attack talent. Moon Emperor. Yes, the Moon Emperor, someone cried. The Moon Emperor's treasure could effortlessly resist the soul attack of an Emperor-level ferocious beast. The Blood-Eye Witch Emperor's Blood-Eye talent is terrifying. Yet someone whispered, it's a divine consciousness attack, a rare combination of divine awareness and pupil technique. With the Moon Emperor and the Blood-Eye Witch Emperor both here, they should be able to stand up to that Emperor-level beast. It's a shame the Tyrannosaurus Emperor was restrained, another voice muttered. If he'd been free, he wouldn't have fallen so easily. They've made a serious enemy of the Witch God Temple, came a third. The Tyrannosaurus Emperor is their third-ranked warrior. The temple will be furious. Ye Tian frowned. A soul-type talent like that was the sort of thing that defied fate itself. Seeing it on an Emperor-class beast was chilling. If such an ability had belonged to a lesser creature, he might have been able to copy it, but an Emperor-level manifestation was beyond his reach. His physical power was immense, but his soul remained comparatively weak. Even an Emperor who had fully opened his mind domain to the Emperor level couldn't withstand the soul assault of an Imperial-grade ferocious beast. He had only opened 12% of his own mind domain, and against a ferocious beast born with a soul attack talent, that shortfall would be a death sentence. It wasn't entirely hopeless. A year had passed since his high soul transfer talent last activated, and it was available again. If he could possess the body of a saint-grade ferocious beast and make physical contact with that Imperial-grade creature, he might be able to copy its soul talent. But the maneuver was deadly risky. One mistake, and he would be killed. The saint-rank cultivators were still talking when Emperor Kui Rong raised his hand to call for silence. Listen, he said. This time it's serious. Not only have Emperor-grade beasts with soul talents appeared, their numbers are increasing. Several emperors, led by the Tomahawk Emperor, have already made proposals. Over 90% of our emperors will enter the far end of the spatial rift. The rest will remain to guard the base. He glanced around the hall. All fighters above the Great Saint level are to go into the rift. Among saints below Great Saint, 70% will be sent. In a few days we will publish the roster. If someone is assigned and refuses to go, they will be taken by force. If anyone attempts to flee, the Emperor will personally hunt them down. I remind you, if we fail to hold the defensive line, the Zhonghai super base will be lost. We'll do it, came the chorus of replies from the saints. All right, that's all for now. Emperor Kui Rong stood. He and several other emperors left together. Those of saint rank who remained behind fell back into conversation, trading and comparing notes as they had before. Ye Tian didn't leave. Instead, he stayed behind and struck up a conversation with the Crazy Sword Grand Sage. Crazy Sword Sage, Ye Tian asked, do you know anything about sword techniques above the gold level? The Crazy Sword Grand Sage's curiosity was piqued. Ye Tian Grand Sage, he said, you haven't reached even 10% mastery of the sword intent yet, have you? No, Ye Tian replied with a faint sigh. It's far too early for that. I'm just curious about what lies beyond gold-level techniques. Once I do reach 10% of the sword intent, I might try cultivating a gold level, or even higher, sword technique. The Crazy Sword Grand Sage accepted the answer. He couldn't believe that someone as young as Ye Tian had already achieved 10% mastery of the sword intent, especially since Ye Tian hadn't taken part in the Enlightenment sessions for decades. Ye Tian Desheng, techniques above the gold rank do exist, the Wild Sword Grand Sage said. I've heard the Tomahawk Emperor keeps a copy. Lu Shidao Emperor, third on the imperial list, actually went to borrow it. When he came back, he only told the world one thing. That technique cannot be cultivated. Lu Shidao was the most terrifying swordsman at the Zhonghai super base. He had realized sword intent to 10% and had mastered 10 gold-ranked sword techniques. His understanding of swordsmanship was unmatched. And he attempted that higher-than-gold technique and failed. The other Lu emperors who knew its contents swore never to speak of it. The only way anyone could possess it would be to take it from the Tomahawk Emperor himself. The Wild Sword Grand Sage sighed. How do you expect to borrow it from the Tomahawk Emperor? Ye Tian's face lit with interest. You're thinking of learning that blade technique? The sage asked. Forget it. If Lu Shidao couldn't cultivate it, you shouldn't set your sights on it. The cost to borrow that sword technique was outrageous. I'd heard that the Lu Shidao Emperor had once offered the equivalent of 10 gold-ranked sword skills just to borrow it, and still hadn't secured it permanently. Even the Tomahawk Emperor, who didn't practice swordsmanship, knew at a glance how precious it was and why no one was willing to lend it out. The Mad Sword Grand Sage only shook his head, though there was a wistful look in his eyes. He could no longer cultivate, but who wouldn't be curious about such a thing? It was a shame the price was so steep, otherwise he would have been the first to try to borrow it. That's it, Ye Tian said, as if giving up. But beneath the resignation in his voice, I could tell he had already made up his mind. He would find a way to borrow that sword technique, no matter what it took. Chapter 176. In a few days Ye Tian knew it would be him. There was no doubt he would be chosen to enter the space rift and stand on the front line of defense. He had no intention of running. People needed strong fighters to protect them. If danger came and a person chose to flee, could they still call themselves human? He wouldn't be that kind of person. Besides, compared with ordinary saint-rank cultivators, he had plenty of ways to save himself. Only an emperor-rank ferocious beast with a soul attack might leave him without an escape route. Time passed quickly, 3 days slipped by, and a dispatch from the scattered cultivators arrived. He was to report to the base at the Space Rift Beast World within 10 days. 10 days, time to get ready, Ye Tian murmured. He still had substantial resources. Some were earmarked for the Heavenly Pavilion. Others could be sold. Among them were Forging God Dan. He'd started with 3, given 1 to Wang Yan, and had 2 left to use or sell as needed. The Forging God Dan was extremely valuable at the Zhonghai Superbase. Many Imperial descendants possessed extraordinary cultivation talent, but breaking through to the holy level remained difficult. The Forging God Dan greatly increased the chance of making that leap. Because of that, kings and even the emperor would spare no expense to buy the pills for their heirs. The 2 Forging God Dan were traded away and converted into items that assist in opening the cerebral domain. My cultivation already far outstripped most others, Ye Tian thought, but if he had a supply of those domain-opening treasures, he could advance even faster in a short time. He made his decision. Strength was the priority. The Forging God Dan would be of little use to him personally. His sister Yeyu was a morning star-level prodigy and wouldn't need such a pill in the future. As for the people in the Heavenly Pavilion, he wouldn't hand out the Forging God Dan. They would have to rely on themselves. With that settled, Ye Tian turned his attention to the next preparations. Ye Tian posted the trade information for the Forging God Dan on the Scattered Cultivation Alliance headquarters trading platform. He listed the 2 pills separately, each one exchanged for 10 copies of the treasure that unlocks the brain domain. In other words, the 2 Forging God Dan were worth 20 of those brain domain unlocking treasures. The listings went up and were snatched almost instantly. That rapid pickup underlined how rare the Forging God Dan were. If he'd been any slower, someone else would have grabbed them. When the transaction showed on the screen, Ye Tian saw who had taken the offers. 2 buyers appeared in the record, one ranked as a king and the other as an emperor. He expected the king to be the purchaser. He had no idea why an emperor would show up. From the talent archive, he could already read the emperor's name, Qin Shan. Qin Shan was a scion of the Qin family, one of the emperors of the Qin line. That made Ye Tian frown. Emperors weren't supposed to appear in Scattered Cultivation Alliance transactions. An imperial-ranked cultivator taking part in alliance trades violated the rules. He stood there, uneasy, watching the screen as the trade completed and wondering why an emperor had involved himself in such a routine exchange. Ye Tian Desheng, don't be angry, Emperor Qinshan blurted, forcing an apologetic smile. I know this is against the rules, but we're willing to add more bargaining chips. Ye Tian Desheng's expression hardened. He folded his arms. I understand. Who I trade with isn't the issue. Emperor Qinshan, what price are you offering for the 2 Forging God Dan in my possession? Qinshan's face went stiff for a moment. Both of those pills had been seized by his men, so he had every reason to want them back. He swallowed and forced the terms out. 24 copies of a brain domain opener. He hurried on, eager to justify the offer. Each of those treasures lets a Hui-level cultivator open 0.5% of their brain domain in half a month. With 24 copies, a Hui cultivator could open 12% of their deep brain domain in a year. For Morningstar talent cultivators, the effect is weaker. They'd only gain around 4% in a year. Items that assist with opening the brain domain are exceedingly rare. You know how valuable even a 0.5% advance in half a month can be. Offering 24 copies is a serious concession. Qinshan's jaw clenched. Yes, he finished, his voice low but resolute. Ye Tian considered the offer, then inclined his head. Qinshan's face brightened. Very well, let us seal the exchange, he said happily. He had already spent 2 forging Divine Dan on his own children. He had married late and fathered a son and a daughter. The son, Qin He, was a combat prodigy, expected one day to reach 5-star king level, but his innate talent was only at the extraordinary tier. His daughter was a little younger and had only just broken into the king level. Her talent was likewise merely extraordinary. Because neither child had supreme natural talent, he needed to secure more treasures like the forging Divine Dan for them. Those pills were chronically scarce. Even a powerful organization like the Qin sect didn't have many to spare. And he was only an ordinary emperor within the sect. With so many emperors and heirs of super-level cultivation talent competing for supplies, Qin sect's stock of forging Divine Dan would never stretch far enough if everyone clamored for them. He couldn't expect Qinzong to hand one over, and his people had already been sent into the temple space to search, without success. Left with no other option, he had begun scouring the trading networks, hoping someone would be willing to trade a forging Divine Dan. At last, someone from the Scattered Cultivation Alliance contacted him, a leader he had once favored, bringing information about a trade for the forging god Dan. The deal went through. Qinshan exhaled in relief. Now my 2 children should be able to break through to the holy level, he said, visibly eased. Ye Tian had acquired 24 pieces of the brain domain opening treasure, 4 more than he'd expected. They were far superior to ordinary ones. The whole transaction had been extremely profitable. Back at his place, Ye Tian began using the artifacts to open his brain domain and activated triple time acceleration. A low rumble filled the air as his inner domain expanded under the combined influence of divine consciousness and the treasures, much faster than before. A treasure like this would let a Huiyue-level cultivator open 0.5% of their brain domain in half a month, Ye Tian murmured. I'm a Shi-Ri-level talent. I can open 0.5% in 3 days. With triple acceleration, that's the equivalent of 0.5% per day in the outside world. After a day of secluded cultivation, Ye Tian had expanded his deep brain domain by another 0.5%. The key was the treasures he was using. Each one sustained 2 days of cultivation, which translated into 1% expansion of the domain. With 24 of those treasures, he could open 24% in 48 days, a staggering rate. This resource consumption is insane, Ye Tian muttered, excitement bright in his eyes. My deep brain domain is already at 12%. Once this batch of treasures is used up, it'll reach 36%. My strength is going to explode. He kept at it. There were still almost 9 days left before he had to report, so he planned to leave on the final day. Time flew. 8 days later, his domain had reached 16.5%. It's time to go, he decided. Ye Tian ended his retreat and prepared to depart for the 5-star space rift. Before he left, he told Ye Yu and the members of the Heavenly Pavilion to evacuate the Zhonghai superbase. Southeast, 700,000 kilometers away. That is where the 5-star space rift guarded by the Zhonghai superbase lay. Ye Tian flew in and stared at a vast rift in space that stretched for thousands of meters, like the sky itself had been torn open. Compared to it, the 3-star fissure near the Demon Sea Grand Base looked insignificant, almost child's play. On this side of the breach, huge array formations ringed the area. Several of them were more powerful than the highest-ranked arrays he'd ever seen, no doubt Morning Star arrays. A vast army was assembled as well, and scattered among the troops were cultivators of terrifying caliber, kings, saints, even emperors. From the battlements of several distant castles, a dreadful aura pulsed outward, and Ye Tian felt a chill run through him at the sheer scale of power concentrated here. Before he could gather his thoughts, a king-level cultivator swooped down, clasped his fist in salute, and said, "Grand Sage Ye Tian, please come with me." Chapter 177. Good. Ye Tian followed the king-rank escort through ranks of guards and entered a vast fortress. As soon as they passed the gate, he was handed a token, one of the credentials required to enter the spatial rift. The base issued the tokens because there are, in this age, people with camouflage or disguise talents who could sneak dangerous beasts in. The Zhonghai Superbase was well aware of that risk and tightly controlled access. If a person falls in battle, their token is destroyed. Only with your own intact, refined core token can you pierce the arrayed light curtain sealing the rift's surface. Without it, there is no way through. Ye Tian stepped through the rift and soon stood inside a huge stronghold. It was undeniably smaller than the Zhonghai Superbase, but in terms of defense, it was even more formidable. There were no high rises here, only massive castles and palaces hewn from extremely hard stone, each positioned within intricate defensive formations. The cost of such construction and arrays was enormous, but there was no choice. Without them, a ferocious beast attack would have simply wiped the base away. Zhonghai Superbase didn't look like a fortress from the outside. Many of its high-rises weren't heavily fortified. Because the interior of the base was secure, there was no need to build everything like bunkers. Out on the actual front lines, of course, you wouldn't see flashy towers at all. When Ye Tian arrived, he reported to the guard in charge and was formally posted to the base. Over the next few days, he learned the layout and the chain of command. The population was small. Most of the people stationed here were fighters at the king level or above. There were only a handful of masters, top-tier experts funded jointly by the major factions, whose job was to handle attacks by apex or high-level fierce beasts. A surprising number of those beasts were simple-minded. They didn't understand the base's defenses and would attack anyone they saw, so the army had to deal with them. Outside of special missions, most of the king-level and above cultivators spent their time in the base, training and recuperating. Right now, he couldn't train normally. Holy-grade and Emperor-grade beasts kept appearing near the base, and every time that happened, Saint-level and higher experts would come to investigate. Ye Tian was still new to the family, so he'd been given a month off. After that, he'd be sent on missions. The only real advantage of being posted here, as far as he was concerned, was the abundance of Upanishads-level talents. Emperor and Saint-level figures were everywhere. If he'd arrived earlier, he could have secured Upanishads' defense, strength, and speed talents without so much trouble. His replication talent had just come off cooldown. He focused and copied an Emperor-level Upanishad speed talent into his palm. Then he began the fusion. 10 minutes later, the process completed. His speed talent had been upgraded to Upanishads level. With that, Ye Tian now possessed 3 Upanishads-level talents in total. Ye Tian was probably the only person in the Zhonghai Superbase who possessed 3 rare talents at once: power, defense, and speed, all bearing the mysterious name Upanishads. There was one more opportunity he wanted to take: to copy the Blood-Eye talent from the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor. The Blood-Eye talent was an ocular ability tied to divine consciousness and able to counter soul attack talents. If he could copy it, he might actually stand a chance against an Emperor-level beast that used soul attacks. He tried to inquire about it, but the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor and the Moon Emperor had already gone off to hunt an Emperor-level beast with soul-type abilities and had not returned, so Ye Tian could only wait. While he lingered at the base, he ran into several acquaintances: Shiyue Saint-Daughter and Wang Yan. The Sunset Moon Saint-Daughter had also surged up to the holy level, for reasons nobody seemed to know, and, as the Moon God Sect's Saint-Daughter, she had been dispatched along with Tess, others. Wang Yan, however, had been unlucky and was classified only at the ordinary saint level. That was the situation that day. Ye Tian and Wang Yan sat in the fortress's watchroom, steaming cups of tea between them. Outside, the wind pushed against the battlements. Inside, the light was low and steady. "Are you afraid?" Wang Yan asked after a while. Ye Tian smiled faintly. "Afraid of what?" "War." Wang Yan's voice turned serious. "Given how things are shaping up, A major war between Zhonghai Superbase and those beasts from the 5-star Rift seems inevitable. It'll be worse than before. The Holy Rank will take heavy losses, and the Emperor rank won't escape it either. Ye Tian fell quiet. I remember 20 years ago, Wang Yan went on, eyes on the distant horizon. When Zhonghai clashed with those rift beasts, we were driven out of the spatial crack and forced back to the Earth side. That battle cost us dearly. Dozens of holy officers fell. Of the 36 Emperor rank fighters we had then, 3 never returned. It wasn't until about 10 years ago that we managed to push back into the rift and re-establish the base. I wasn't even eligible to fight in that battle, Ye Tian said, staring into his cup. I was still too junior then, and now, just after I reached holy rank, they assigned me to guard this place. I don't know whether getting promoted was fortunate or cursed. Wang Yan glanced at him, then nodded slowly. The fortress hummed with quiet readiness around them, and outside, the world waited as if holding its breath. Let nature take its course. If a beast shows up, someone has to stop it. Ye Tian smiled. Am I scared? Maybe a little, but I'm not going to die that easily. Wang Yan looked unsettled. Ye Tian could read the worry on her face. She was only an ordinary saint, and those at saint rank were the easiest to fall. In a full-scale war, she would be an obvious target for the beasts. If she ran into a slightly stronger saint-level monster, she wouldn't be able to hold it off. Once that happened, there was only one possible outcome. Her chance of surviving was under 10%. Anyone who knew their odds were that poor would be unsettled, and the ordinary saints selected for the coming battles had been living with that grim knowledge. Over the past few days, Ye Tian had seen too many downcast faces. There was nothing to be done, though. The beasts wanted to invade the earth. Humans wanted to protect their homes. The clash was inevitable. After Wang Yan left, Ye Tian walked the streets alone. Suddenly, a distant roar cut through the air. A commotion rose in front of him. Ye Tian looked up and saw 5 or 6 beams of light descend into the compound. Several emperors had arrived. His gaze swept over the newcomers. A woman of uncanny beauty stood there, a luminous moon hanging behind her like a living deity. But the moon was marred by cracks, and her face was unusually pale. Beside her loomed a huge man with a blood-colored eye set in his brow, unmistakably a witch. He was the blood-eyed witch emperor. Luna and the blood-eyed witch emperor have returned, someone called out. Ye Tian felt his heart skip. He hurried forward, closing the distance until he was about 2,000 meters away, and probed the witch emperor's attributes. Scan talents: blood-eyed witch emperor, witch, punishment. Yuan, cultivation talent, Huyue, blood-eye talent, intermediate. Defense talent, pseudo-Upanishad, 50%. Power talent, Upanishad. Speed talent, Upanishad. Cursed talent, primary. Not bad. The blood-eyed witch emperor's talents were strong. He possessed 2 Upanishad-level talents, the blood-eye aptitude, and even a mid-level curse talent. Damn that talent, Ye Tian muttered. He was curious about it, but after a moment's thought, he decided it would be wiser to copy the blood-eye ability instead, a dependable, life-saving talent. With that decision made, he focused and copied it. Instantly, a mid-grade blood-eye talent materialized in his hands. After copying the medium blood-eye talent, Ye Tian returned to his residence on the 3rd floor of the fortress and deactivated the protective formation. He began the fusion process. This time there was no pain, only a faint warmth spreading through his body. Before long, the fusion was complete. Among his many talents, he now had an extra medium blood-eye skill. It turned out the medium blood-eye did not work like the blood-eye witch emperor's ability, which projects from a 3rd eye between the brows. Ye Tian's version could be launched from any one of his eyes. He had expected that copying the talent would give him another physical eye in the center of his forehead, but that assumption proved wrong. Knowing he could now deploy the blood-eye talent from any eye eased him considerably. If an emperor-level fierce beast ever attempted a soul attack, he could fully unleash the blood-eye in time to counter it, and perhaps avoid being killed in a single stroke. Ye Tian's blood-eye talent turned out to be useful for only one thing. It could annihilate an enemy's divine consciousness and throw their soul into confusion, but it couldn't directly destroy a soul. In other words, it was relatively weak against attacks that targeted the soul itself. Still, It was the only countermeasure Ye Tian could find against soul-based assaults. A short time later, he contacted the Shiwei Saint daughter and learned who had gone out this time: the Moon Emperor, the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor, and several others. She actually found an Emperor-class ferocious beast, she told him. Ye Tian was surprised. The Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor had gone to the place where the Tyrannosaurus Emperor had fallen and discovered a single strand of fur from an Emperor-grade ferocious beast. She cursed that strand to trace the beast's whereabouts, used the curse to approximate the creature's location, and then hunted it down and killed it. It wasn't the particular Emperor-class beast that could only be harmed by soul attacks, but another Emperor-level beast. Still, finding any Emperor-class specimen like that could lead them to the one vulnerable only to soul attacks. The Emperor-level beasts, hit hard by the curse, immediately fled. They would not stand and fight. Among the human emperors, there were expert trackers, however. Once they picked up the direction, they followed the fleeing beast's residual breath and began to close in. Eventually, the emperors caught up. They found, as suspected, several Emperor-level beasts, including one terrifying specimen that attacked only the soul. In the first clash, one emperor fell, but the humans exacted a devastating toll on the beasts. The soul-only predator was rescued at the last moment by an extraordinarily fast Emperor-level beast, which carried it away. The battle left its marks. The Moon Emperor was severely wounded, and the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor had already exhausted her curse ability from repeated use, so she could no longer employ it to trace the fleeing creature. With her power spent, there was no way to pick up the beast's trail. All the emperors reached the same conclusion. The soul ability of that Emperor-grade ferocious beast wasn't strong enough to kill the Moon Emperor or the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor, but it would cut down a freshly promoted emperor in a single strike. Only an emperor whose soul strength was 10 times that of a normal emperor could fully withstand such a soul attack. Anyone with less than 10-fold power could at best fend off a few blows. Among the 36 emperors, then, besides the Moon Emperor and the Blood-Eyed Witch Emperor, there were no more than 10 who reached that 10-fold level, and several of the top 10 were fighters who relied on physical combat rather than deep soul strength. That was bad news. Ye Tian's expression darkened. The 36 emperors' cultivation levels were disappointingly low, at best a century or so of practice. A few of the ancient human monsters had cultivated for 200 or 300 years, but even they had been stuck at the Grandmaster, or King Tai, R for more than a century. After the great upheaval in heaven and earth, their powers had leapt, but overall their strength remained far from formidable. Judging by the current situation, if they couldn't kill that Emperor-level fierce beast, things would go badly. The Beast faction clearly valued that creature highly. They'd sent a host of Emperor-level beasts to guard it. This raid had failed. Another assault would be even less likely to succeed. If they recklessly charged into the enemy camp without dealing with it, it would be disaster. Ye Tian clenched his jaw. Forget the rash attacks. He needed more power. Train first. Get stronger, he told himself. He threw himself into practice, pushing his cultivation relentlessly. With the aid of his treasures, he forced open and expanded his mind domain, driving himself harder than ever. Every 2 days, he managed to unlock another 1% of his deep brain domain. That rate of progress, many times faster than most Huyu-level prodigies, was something they hadn't even dared imagine. Before he realized it, Ye Tian had been spending a month at the guardian outpost of this savage beast world. 30 days of relentless training and cultivation had paid off. By now, his deep brain domain was 31% open. His physical strength had climbed to 3.1 dragon power, and his strongest strike registered at 12,400 dragon power. For comparison, a normal Saint King's attack power sat around 1,000 dragon power. Ye Tian's output eclipsed that by an enormous margin. His speed and defenses were also outstanding, leaving almost no weakness. By the standard classifications, Ye Tian didn't qualify as either a space talent or a time talent, but his real combat capability had already reached the peak Saint King tier. A peak Saint King's raw striking power could far surpass an ordinary emperor's, although emperors typically outclassed others in speed and defense. Even after his recent gains, Ye Tian's speed and defense still lagged a little behind a true emperor's specializations. If he had both space and time talents, Ye Tian could probably kill some ordinary emperors. He had to admit he already possessed combat strength at the imperial rank, but that still wasn't enough to threaten a true top-tier emperor. Only if his talent rose beyond the Upanishads level would that be possible. Ye Tian sighed. Once a talent reached the Upanishads level, it seemed impossible to replicate or go beyond. Upanishads felt like a plateau. Still, he couldn't shake the vague conviction that some level must exist above the Upanishads. He simply hadn't encountered it yet. A sharp tone interrupted his thoughts. A message from the liaison popped up. Check the situation of the fierce beasts in Area 13. Report mission status at all times. Dual objectives. Mission duration, 3 days. Area 13 lay roughly 300,000 kilometers away. That wasn't an enormous distance in cosmic terms, but in the beast world, 300,000 kilometers was already perilous. The regular saint rank officers dared not venture that deep right now. Ye Tian was a great saint, however, so the assignment fell to him. As Ye Tian left the base, he quickly ran into his mission partner. Wind and Blood, he called. Wind and Blood looked just as surprised. Ye Tian, what a coincidence. I didn't expect we'd be paired together on our first mission. Ye Tian smiled. When he thought about it, there weren't many great saint-level warriors around, so running into a familiar face wasn't that unlikely. They set out together, but they didn't soar high into the sky. Flying above the world of beasts would be far too conspicuous, so instead they moved low and fast, skimming the ground to stay hidden as they traveled along the road. Ye Tian asked, Windblood, you're a core member of the Tomahawk Mercenary Hall. I'm interested in the sword technique your master, the Tomahawk Emperor, uses. How could I borrow it, even if I had to offer 10 gold-level techniques in exchange? Windblood cut in, his expression turning serious. You mean that sword skill, that surpasses the gold level? I'm only a named disciple of the Tomahawk Emperor. I can't simply ask him to hand it over. But if you really want to see it, there might be a chance. Chapter 179. What's the catch? Ye Tian asked, shifting his weight. He'd asked on a whim, not really expecting the wind-killing blood to have any usable answer. To his surprise, it did, and his curiosity flared. In ordinary times, you'd have no chance of borrowing the Tomahawk Emperor's technique, the wind-killing blood said. But now is a special period. If someone makes an extraordinary contribution, the request might be granted. It added that there were several other, much tougher conditions, requirements Ye Tian was unlikely to meet, but it would state them anyway. 1. If you possess a treasure that enhances the strength of your soul, you could do more than borrow the technique. You could trade that treasure outright for it. 2. Possessing 3 gold-tier tomahawk skills would also make you eligible to borrow it, but gold-tier tomahawk techniques are even rarer than blade skills, so that's a slim hope. 3. Any true disciple of the Battle-Axe Emperor may borrow that sword technique. But after the death of one of his personal disciples 30 years ago, the Battle-Axe Emperor stopped taking on formal disciples unless they're a genuine world-shaking genius. 4. Anyone who possesses a Shoyuan-dan can trade it outright for the sword technique. Shoyuan-dan? Ye Tian's brow knit in confusion. Why would the Battle-Axe Emperor need a Shoyuan-dan? Saints at the Foundation Establishment Holy Grade can live 1,500 years, and emperors live at least for thousands. The Battle-Axe Emperor already has an extraordinarily long life. What does he need a life pill for? For his wife. Feng Shui's voice was low. It's a secret many don't know, though the older saints and emperors in the Zhonghai superbase are aware of it. His wife married him before the great change of the earth. He was a prodigy, but she has no cultivation talent at all. In the old days, treasures that could enhance a person's innate martial aptitude were nearly impossible to come by. It wasn't until about 50 years ago that such artifacts began to appear in quantity. My generation was fortunate. It became relatively easy not only to improve one's cultivation, but even to raise one's native talent. The older generation, by contrast, had little luck. Those opportunities came too late for many of them. 50 years ago, the Tomahawk Emperor paid an enormous price to lift his wife's talent to a mid-level rank. She was already elderly then and had little lifespan left, so her cultivation progressed painfully slowly. Desperate, he poured countless precious treasures into extending her life. He has kept that up right up to the present day. Because of his sacrifices, his wife's aptitude has finally reached the morning star level. Still, she has plateaued at the peak of a great martial artist and cannot break through to the master rank. Her body is simply too worn. Any violent attempt at a breakthrough would shatter her meridians. Talent alone cannot overcome that kind of physical decline. Only a treasure capable of reversing the ravages of age could give her a real chance. Without such a miracle, there is no hope she will reach master in her lifetime. That's just the way it is. Ye Tian couldn't help but feel pity for the Tomahawk Emperor. Old age is a cruel handicap for cultivators. No matter how gifted someone is, if they start or continue too late, their future is limited. Ye Tian had seen many elderly people in the civilian districts with remarkable innate talent, but he never recruited them. There was no point. Their life force was already nearly spent. Practicing would likely yield no real improvement and might even consume the last of their vitality, causing them to collapse early. Age is an unforgiving barrier. The older you get, the harder it is to progress. If you don't reach the sect master level in your youth, you seldom have the potential to make meaningful breakthroughs later. Even someone as mighty as the Tomahawk Emperor was powerless against that reality. Sure, there were legends of rare treasures that could restore youth, but the Tomahawk Emperor refused to rely on such things, and in any case, the entire Zhonghai superbase didn't possess them. For Ye Tian, this was an opportunity. He possessed a Shouyuan Dan from the temple space, a longevity pill that could extend a life by 100 years. The Tomahawk Emperor's desire to prolong his wife's life wasn't only sentimental, he wanted to buy her time so she might one day advance to master rank. The fact that the current Tomahawk Emperor couldn't do that now didn't mean he couldn't in a century. When this mission is over, I'll find the Tomahawk Emperor, Ye Tian resolved. He didn't tell Windblood about the Shouyuan Dan. Windblood wasn't a bad person. In fact, Ye Tian trusted him enough. During the temple space incident, Windblood had relentlessly pursued and killed Sun Qinghe, even though Sun had reached Dead King level. That kind of resolve impressed Ye Tian. Soon after, Ye Tian and Windblood arrived in Area 13. Ye Tian, be careful, Feng Ji warned solemnly. Even if you're stronger than me now, there could be an Emperor-grade ferocious beast here. We can handle an ordinary Emperor-level beast together, but if it has a powerful special talent, we'll be finished. Don't worry, with me here, we'll be fine, Ye Tian said with obvious confidence. Feng Ji didn't know where Ye Tian's assurance came from, but he still pressed on. All the same, we need a plan. How do we scout this area? Together or separate? Separate, Ye Tian decided. There isn't much difference between one person and two, and if we run into a truly powerful Emperor-level beast, being apart gives us a better chance. Feng Ji nodded. He knew what Ye Tian meant. Separation at least increased the odds that one of them might survive a clash with an overwhelmingly strong opponent. Ye Tian had his own reasons as well. He carried too many secrets, and splitting up would make it easier to use whatever measures he had in reserve. He allowed himself a small, private smile. Ye Tian split off from Windblood and swept Area 13 in two directions. His mission was reconnaissance, not combat. He only needed to confirm the grades and numbers of fierce beasts in the sector. That meant the first rule of probing was concealment. Hide your breath, leave even low-grade beasts alive. He relayed findings in quick bursts over the link. More than 100 top-tier fierce beasts, 3 king-grade beasts, found a holy-grade beast, discovered a nest, roughly 10 holy-grade fierce beasts, hundreds of king-grade beasts, and tens of thousands of top- and advanced-grade fierce beasts. Ye Tian fed the reports in piecemeal as he moved. He was able to sweep the ground so fast because he relied on spatial perception. Beasts burrowed or sleeping underground could hardly hide from his sense. A day later, the stretch he was assigned to was basically mapped. That's when Windblood pinged him. Ye Tian, we found a strange nest. Divine consciousness can't penetrate inside. The situation is unknown. Do you have a way to handle it? If so, come quickly. If not, don't come. Yes, Ye Tian answered. Wind-killing blood had sent his coordinates, and Ye Tian rushed over. Shortly afterward, Ye Tian arrived at the spot where Wind-Killing Blood was hiding. Wind-Killing Blood was concealed inside a huge tree, his gaze fixed on a nearby mountain. The mountain was jet black, and its rocks seemed to block all divine perception. Yet saint-level ferocious beasts were known to come and go from its caves. Clearly, the lair was no ordinary place. Seeing Ye Tian approach, Wind-Killing Blood urgently transmitted a warning. Don't reveal your aura. This nest is dangerous. Chapter 180. Ye Tian drew a breath and slipped into the hollow of the tree. The rock of this mountain must be one of those that blocks divine senses, Windblood said. It's very valuable. Many of the top power headquarters in the Zhonghai superbase use similar stone. It can shield against probing and even suppress the reach of a divine consciousness. That explained why the sacred-level beasts hadn't used their divine senses to search. Otherwise, they would have detected him here. Ye Tian tested it. Sure enough, his divine sense was severely dampened, at most a tenth, maybe only a few tenths of its usual range. He didn't dare probe across the cave. Doing so would risk exposing himself. Ye Tian, how are you going to scout inside? Windblood asked. Without answering fully, Ye Tian immediately activated his stealth talent. In an instant, he seemed to melt into the shadows, his presence nearly erased. Windblood stared, stunned. He probed again and again with his divine consciousness, but could not sense Ye Tian at all. Is this stealth? Windblood's voice tightened with surprise. He'd seen stealth talents before. The Tomahawk Mercenary Hall even had a genius invisible operative used for special missions, but none of those could hide a holy-grade divine consciousness. Yet Ye Tian's stealth was so powerful, it utterly blocked detection. It's an invisibility talent, someone murmured. It can hide a holy-grade ferocious beast. Ye Tian's voice answered calmly. Then, with this stealth, I can go and take a look. Windblood nodded. Given the strength of Ye Tian's concealment, he was the best choice to scout ahead. He was unlikely to be discovered. Ye Tian felt reassured. He activated his stealth talent, then his flight ability, and slipped through the air toward the target. Ye Tian chose to activate his innate flying talent instead of relying on his cultivated flight technique, even though his personal flying ability exceeded the king level. The reason was simple. He needed to minimize fluctuations in his yuan qi. Even if a saint-grade flight moved at the slowest pace, it still stirred his yuan qi slightly. In the sea of heaven and earth yuan qi, that might be barely noticeable, but if a ferocious beast with a special sensing talent were nearby, it could pick up those tiny disturbances and betray his presence. An instinctive, talent-based flight, on the other hand, was just that, instinct. It didn't disturb his vital energy the way practiced techniques did, and so it was far less likely to be detected. Keeping to a low altitude, Ye Tian reached the cave mouth quickly and slipped inside. The entrance dropped downwards, an aisle clearly opening into an extensive subterranean chamber. He didn't dare use spatial sensing to probe ahead. Spatial perception could be fooled by tricks, but any powerful saint-grade beast with spatial aptitude would not be fooled, and if such a beast were here, a probing pulse might alert it. He flew on in silence, then paused at the sight that unfolded beneath him. A vast underground world spread out below his feet, an entire cavern like a hidden realm. Here it is, he breathed. Ye Tian saw countless saint-grade ferocious beasts nearby, and in the far distance the presence of several imperial-grade creatures pressed on the air. One in particular made him feel breathless, a vast golden bird, like a mythical rock, its wings spanning hundreds of meters and its golden eyes burning like twin suns. Several other imperial-grade beasts stood around it like guards. This huge bird must be the king here, Ye Tian thought. He drifted closer, and a familiar, intense longing rose up within him, stronger than ever before. He realized at once that he had found a treasure capable of evolving his replica talent. Excitement flooded him. When he closed to within 2,000 meters, he activated his copy talent to probe the creature's abilities. Species, golden-winged eagle bloodline talent, glowing moon level strength. Talent pseudo-Upanishads, 30%. Flying talent, Upanishads, speed talent, top defensive talent, Upanish. Adds, Hawkeye talent, top/talent, top. When Ye Tian read the golden-winged eagle's profile, he was stunned. Its talent array was absurdly strong. This was unmistakably an emperor-level fiend among the 36 emperors, even above the ordinary members of that elite. Its gifts were extraordinary. He forced his expression back under control. There were still a few days before he could copy any of the beast's talents, so there was no point rushing. What mattered most to him were the rarer abilities, the Upanishad's flying talent and the top-rank slashing talent. The other attributes, speed, Hawkeye, defensive Upanishads, even the pseudo-Upanishad's strength at 30%, were things he already possessed or that offered little new advantage. Ye Tian's face darkened as he considered the slashing talent in particular. A top-level slash would be a powerful offensive tool, perhaps with special properties, able to cleave or smash through even solid matter. That kind of ability would be far more useful to him than repeating skills he already had. For now, then, he would wait. Ye Tian tore his eyes away from the golden-winged eagle and looked past the huge bird. Nestled in the void, rooted in the depths of space itself, a single flower drifted there, fragile and impossible. He named it the Void Flower. His heart tightened. That void flower was the prize he had been hunting, the very thing that stirred his greed. No wonder the eagle guarded the place so fiercely. This was its nest, hidden in a strange pocket of mountain and sky that kept it from being discovered by humans or other emperor-level ferocious beasts. The flower wasn't fully mature yet, but even in its adolescent state, it could accelerate the evolution of his replica talent. He couldn't afford to wait for it to ripen. When it did, the golden-winged eagle would swallow it the moment it appeared. Ye Tian made his decision. He would come back in a few days and snatch the void flower before the eagle had a chance to claim it. Whatever it took, he would get his hands on it. "We can't let word of this get out," Ye Tian warned under his breath. "If the Tomahawk Emperor or anyone else finds out, they'll come straight for the void flower. Leave first." He melted back into the shadows and retreated slowly, taking care not to draw the golden-winged eagle's notice. Once clear of the underground chamber and out of the cave, Ye Tian returned to where his companions were waiting. "Ye Tian, how did it go?" Feng Shu asked the moment he appeared. Ye Tian gave a guarded report. "There are a lot of holy-grade beasts down there, and 4 imperial-grade ones. One of those imperial beasts, at least the largest, seems as strong as the 36 emperors. I didn't dare get close. It's clearly a lair for something very powerful. We should avoid disturbing it if we can." What he didn't say was that he'd taken the void flower and hidden it. He kept that to himself. Feng Shu drew a sharp breath. He was glad he hadn't gone down with Ye Tian. If he had, he might not have come back. "We have to report this," he said after a moment, voice low and tight. "Tell the others and see how they react." Feng Shu's face hardened as he looked toward the cave mouth, already turning over the implications in his mind. "I've got the stealth talent. I'll stay here and keep watch. You go and search the other areas, then come back to base," Ye Tian said. "Don't worry. Even an emperor-level ferocious beast won't be able to find me unless it really probes for me." All right. Feng Ji thought the plan made perfect sense and agreed. What surprised him, though, was that Ye Tian was willing to face a ferocious beast on the emperor level, the sort classified with the 36 emperors.